Today we are here to enhance our skills in grant writing, an essential component for advancing and scientific clinical research. To begin, I would like to invite Dr. Kapil Goyal and Professor Arnab Pal to officially introduce the session with their introductory note. Please welcome them warmly.
A very good afternoon to all of you. And on behalf of MERC and RGC, I welcome you all. And today is a Saturday and it's the second half. And I think with the start, our strategy has failed because we have not included the starting lunch. So the participants are very less. So let's hope that they will join in a short while. And also, you have spared your extra time, and we hope that you will be able to write better extramural grant after completion of this workshop. And we are also very thankful to our experts and the speakers who have consented to give the talks on a relatively very short notice. So just to give the introduction, I will like to highlight few of the important points. As we all know that why extramural grant is important. Whenever anyone joins as a faculty, so what you hear from your friends, yes, it is very important to get the promotion, okay? But we will try to look it into a different aspect, like it has a word extra. Extra means that we are applying to a external funding agency. And in the institute also we are supporting like the intramural grant. But today is a budget session also, and many of you must be missing the budget session also. So to give a similar type of flavor, I would like to analyze it in a somewhat different way. What extra hidden gems are there in the extramural grant? So as we know that whenever someone receives the extramural grant, the first thing is to open the ledger page. And once the ledger page is opened, RGC becomes active that give us the administrative charges. So these administrative charges are very important because with this, we promote the intramural, the research inside the institute. And after that, you start posting the advertisement for recruiting the manpower. So with that, you get the first-hand experience of management, how to manage the manpower. And also after that, you start like recruiting the various PhDs and you train the manpower and you do the capacity building. And after that, you start procuring the equipment or the consumables. So being a government institute, we have to do all these things to the GEM. So we are also promoting the Make in India concept. And after that, you get the innovations, patents, publications, and also you increase your networking and you get the international collaborations also. So by that, you bring the foreign exchange also to the nation. So it is not only your development, it is the development of the department, of the institute, and as a nation as a whole. So whenever you next propose to going to write a grant, so be confident and don't be fearful that we can't write. So it is a step towards building the nation strong. So another, in just two or three slides I will finish. So whenever you join as a faculty member, you have some common perceptions. You hear that a particular grant can only be written by someone who is very expert. That is a one who writes and it gets accepted. It's like he has the golden words only. And we tend to develop a fear inside whether we can also match to that standard or not. And somewhere around the gossip area, we also tend to gather the information. Yes, the grants are only a phone call away for some of the very strong person who have a very strong networking. And the other way around can also happen, the phone call in a red color. If you are not maintaining the cordial relation, then you won't be able to get if the phone call goes to the funding agency. So all these things matter. And the most depressing thing is when you hear that someone has submitted 15 projects. Yaar, mera to ek bhi nahi hua. So in that case, we have analyzed out of 15, only 1 or 2 are getting selected finally. So the most important aspect of today's workshop is on the quality. on the quality writing and on getting the quality grants. And recently on the internet, this picture is very viral. Can anybody tell what it depicts? Yes, it is a alignment. Usually planets are revolving around the sun. We are not talking, but when they align in a particular direction, then everyone is talking about that. So consider sun as a funding agency, and other planets are the components of your, various components of your grant writing. So when your all things are perfectly aligning with the concept of the funding agency, then your grant will stand out among the galaxies of the various proposals. So with this, I will end my talk, and I invite Dr. Arnapal, faculty in charge, to highlight on these concepts, that what should be the various components and how we should align our project proposal with the funding agency. And I will also request him to briefly discuss about the genesis of this workshop. Thank you very much.
With Mission ICMR 2025, how to write a grant. You may be knowing, or another information is that ICMR call is on. ICMR grant writing proposal call is on. Small grants, it will be submitted till 1st of April, and the intermediate grants to be supposed to be submitted by 8th of April. We have time. So why this happened? Now coming first again, what we can do in PGI. So if we see, there are 4D. It is a very new concept that is envisaged by DG ICMR, current DG ICMR: descriptive, discovery, development, and delivery. Different types of research. Now in PGI, I have made them according to their size, what we can do at PGI. We can do it PGI maximum delivery research, development, discovery, and descriptive is the slightly lower. So what does it mean, descriptive research? I think Matthew sir will highlight it much more. Just to go through population-based study, association study, this comes under the descriptive research. Coming to the discovery research, new biomarker study. You can talk about new therapeutic agents, identification, and all these things. We'll discuss it in some more depth. In case of development research, development of a new diagnostic kit, new therapeutic agents, therapeutic protocols, and all these things. And what we can do in PGI by doing all this, finally, we would like to deliver to our society. It needs to be done by multicentric RCTs, health economic studies, repository of biological strains, and clinical trials of neural molecules, and so on and so forth. So these are the basic concept of ICMR grant writing. ICMR will ask for all these 4D. Now need for this workshop. ये तो सबको पता है, ICMR का वेबसाइट में जाएंगे पता चल जाएगा. But why the need of this workshop? Before 2023, before this current Director General has joined, ICMR used to be called, and the average grant was very meager. 30-35 lakh रुपया देते हैं, and something goes beyond 45 lakh, they will say they've reduced the budget to 30 lakhs. But that concept, with the inflation of this country and everywhere, it does not gives us a better result. So in 2023, ICMR started a new call for proposal with the 4D concept, and they have started investigator-initiated small grants, investigator-initiated intermediate grants, and Center for Advanced Research with this type of grants. Okay, now in the first year, the average grants for small grants is approximately 72 lakhs. Last year, 2024, again it has been increased up to 2 crore. In the small grant, it has been increased to 2 crore. The intermediate grant remains the same, and Center for Advanced Research remains the same. The average grant of small grant has increased to more than 1 crore. So whatever before 2023 35 lakhs, now we can get more than 1 crore also, which is a significant amount of funding. Now, if we talk about our success rate at PGI, in 2023, the total projects submitted in both intermediate and small grant was 179 proposals, and out of which 47 was sanctioned to the ICMR grant. So our success rate is approximately 1:4. What happened in 2024? We have submitted more than 300 proposals, but sanctioned only 27. And the success rate has become from 1:4 to 1:10. The day result was out, I was panicked. I talked with sir, I talked with the PGI, and DPGI sir says that कि तू एक काम कर, लोगों को थोड़ा सा सिखा कैसे ग्रांट लाया जाता है. There may be many other factors, but this is the internal factor where we can work upon. And that is the genesis of this workshop, what we have done. And I am assuring you, this is the beginning only. We'll be conducting many more on this kind. So this was the question. Now, as I have discussed the genesis, I would like to highlight what we are going to do today. The first lecture will be taken by Professor Joseph Matthew on how to frame a scientific or clinical problem into a research question. Many of us are clinicians, many of us sitting into the in the diagnostic part, and some of us are doing the basic sciences. But being at PGI, our emphasis to be to solve a patient-related problem. A clinician must be having some problem which cannot be solved on that thing, that should be translated into bed to bench side and going back to the patient. So that is how to frame a scientific or clinical problem into a research question. Second part will be taken by Professor Arun Agarwal, the descriptive population-based study proposal. He'll be discussing how to make it from a population to the publication or to the policy decision. Third, Dr. Vivek will be talking about delivery research, how we can deliver our research, what we do, into actually in patients. And I will be talking about important part, that is development and discovery proposal, and how to do a budget justification. We have asked in our Google form regarding what do we want to cover, and what I can get, 80% of the questions are coming into the budget. We have analyzed these questions, 80% is budget. We will be discussing many of them during my lecture, and at the end the panel discussion will be there, and these panelists are chosen very carefully with the help sir, that from basic sciences, from clinical sciences, from translational sciences to health economics. Our experts are from the different varied things, and some of the questions what we have sent will be answered by them also. So with this thing, I am just closing my initial talk here, and later on we'll meet again. And
it's now my pleasure to invite our worthy Dean Research, Professor Sanjay Jain, to deliver the welcome address. His presence here today truly underscores the importance of this initiative. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will not take very long. Let me tell you that you're there on Saturday at 2 o'clock. Most of us actually look forward to Saturday, and especially in the afternoon when we want to spend time with our families, have a good lunch, post-lunch siesta, possibly go out and, in this weather when the sun is out. So something must be more important than all these things. And let me tell you that nothing can be more important than actually getting an extramural grant. I always give an example. शेर के मुंह पे थोड़ा सा खून लगा दो, शेर अपने आप खून मांगेगा. Extramural grant is like this. What do you get? Somebody said, I said, let us be very frank about it, that it gives a warmth somewhere here. When I got my first grant, it gets you something. You feel that you have arrived. No, you start believing that you have got something. Let me tell you, it's like getting into PGI. Not that PGI is the only institute, but it gives you something. It gives you kicks. It is that addiction. Everybody wants to do it. But the point is that we don't know actually how to go about. Maybe in our hesitation, we are a little bit scared to ask questions. The most important thing is the science behind a grant. Why a grant will be given. What we are going to be doing today is basically converting that scientific idea into a defined process. We are here to discuss the process. Science will be decided by you. Nothing can work. It's like if the things are nice, it's okay, but you need a packaging. And what we are going to do is basically to make a package out of it. And please remember, it's not only for ICMR, it's for DBT, DST, everything. And this is only one of the parts by which we want to improve the research. In fact, there are many more steps by which we want to improve the research, and let me tell you that It's the days have gone out when it used to be called ELISA research. What normally we do? यार एक साइटोकिन है, ये डिजीज है, दोनों को जोड़ दो. We start doing things not based on what is required by the institute, what is required by the society, but we start making our own type of. That way you can generate possibly a good paper, but you cannot do a good research. Impact factor is important, but equally important is social impact. What exactly do we deliver? The point why I'm making is that your grant would be accepted if it has got a social value. Much more than, not that the basic research is not required, but let me tell you the emphasis is on delivery and what good can we do. So you have to find your own answers. As I said, there are multiple things which we are planning. Maybe a seed money when a new faculty member joins. But mandatory things would be 3 courses. A course in research methodology, biostatistics, and biomedical ethics, which the person has to do on his or her own, which is freely available on ICMR websites and plenty of others. Show us the 3 certificates, we'll give you the seed money. Money is not the main issue. Money should never be a hindrance. It's only a way. And as Arnav has just told you, that the grant is 2 crores, which is not a small amount. And as I said, you can do plenty. And we have seen there are n number of faculty members I can name who have done excellent research in the last 2 years. But it needs to be promoted. And that's why we are here. And please feel free to ask questions. The discussions, this is going to be bilateral. It's not that you cannot stop us if you feel something, and don't feel that any question is small. We may not have the answers, but the questions will all be valid. So you can stop us, and MERC and RGC with the whole department actually is there to facilitate. We are not blockers. We will not stop. As I said, there are 2 components. One is because most of you, actually the intentions are right, but possibly you are not aware of the processes. And in Government of India, you know that the paperwork has to be perfect, that's all. So we are there to see that your paperwork is fine. If you need help in statistics, most of us don't know. We have good statisticians with us. We can help you. We have good programmers with us. We have people who can help you in IT. We have people in writing too. But the idea has to be yours. As I always say, science is the most important. And I think, hand over to you. The rest is okay.
Thank you, Dean sir. Our first session is an important one, as it deals with the framing research question, the foundation of any research grant proposal. We are honored to have Professor Joseph Matthew with us today, who will guide us through the process transforming a scientific clinical problems into a focused research question. Welcome, Professor Joseph Matthew.
Thank you. So let's plunge straight into the topic. So framing research questions, and I'll try to keep this interactive by starting with a small MCQ kind of a thing. Why does anyone in this institute undertake research? Here are the options. What is your choice? Quick. It's not a very complicated question. It doesn't come in PGI's entrance test. It's not difficult. What is your answer? Everybody agrees it's all of the above? That's excellent, because the actual answer is F. It's none of the above. The only reason anybody should be doing research is to find and thereby after report answers to research questions. Everything else is correct. There is no doubt that these are the reasons we do research. But if you don't look at research from this perspective, we will end up with that 10% success rate that Dr. Arnab just now showed us. Research provides the answer, but it can provide an answer only if we have a clear question. And one famous guy said, if I had a problem to solve in 1 hour time, and my life depended on the solution to that problem, his life depends on the solution to that problem, I will spend the first 55 minutes on framing the question and only 5 minutes on finding the answer. Because, I'm quoting him further, if I have the contours of the question correct, finding the answer is not a big problem. Who said that? Not one of the usual jokers. This was said by Einstein. So if you can imagine that a fellow like that has given so much importance to framing a question correctly, then you can understand automatically the importance of framing appropriate research questions. Now, when we write proposals and things like that and we have great ideas, the important thing to understand is, do we have a research question first of all? Not enough to have a question. Is it an answerable question? And then, of course, what is exactly that question? So here I'm putting again 3 examples to you which are all very relevant. Which one of these is the answerable question? There are 3 questions here all revolving around drinking coffee to try and stay awake for the next 2.5 hours. Which of these is answerable? We are asking very difficult questions, is it? Only one of these is answerable. Which one? See, obviously, because the first one is a decision question. You might like to do research on it, but it's not really answerable. The second is only you can answer. The third is the answerable question, but we often frame questions like the first 2. To give a more practical example, people will write research proposals whose title looks like this. Role of something, exactly as Sir said, role of some cytokine X, Y, Z in people with some clinical condition. Some people will name the proposal itself as to study ABC in X, Y, Z, but neither of these is answerable. If you reframe it as what is the level of that product XYZ in people with ABC and compared it to people without ABC, now it's answerable. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? So not every idea which we have at the end of which you put a question mark will become an answerable question. Questions have to be answerable and only then they can be framed properly. So for this, there is now a universally accepted format, and you are familiar with the word PICO, are you not? So to PICO we add a T, and then sometimes we add an S also, and it is very easy to understand if you think of the full forms of these various letters. It's population of problem, intervention, comparison, outcomes, time frame, and so on and so forth. But these things will not make much sense until we break it down to simple English language. We're basically asking what disease, what clinical condition. In public health, what kind of problem are we talking about? What did these people get? So the difference between intervention and exposure is, if the investigator has given it to the participants in the study, that's an intervention. If nature gave it, then that's an exposure. So giving a drug by the investigator is an intervention. Getting COVID because nature gave it, that's an exposure. So the letter I can be, interchangeably used for intervention and exposure as well. So what did they get or what did they have as compared to what? That comparison is very, very important, because intrinsically sometimes we think that questions don't have comparison, but unless there is something that you're comparing it to, the answer will not be very meaningful. Then what outcomes are we looking? What was evaluated? And time frame is not the time frame of the study. So if you are doing a 3-year duration study, the time frame is not 3-year duration. The time frame is the time frame in which the outcomes are going to be measured. You understand? Your study might run for 3 years, but each participant is being followed up for 6 months for an outcome at baseline, and at 6 months, then the time frame of the outcome measurement is 6 months, not 3 years. Sometimes people add an S, which means setting. So are you talking of a hospital-based setting, a community-based setting, a multi-centered setting, and so on and so forth. So if you were to look at this simple question that we started with, does coffee drinking help us to stay awake, and so on and so forth, it can be broken down like this. People who are attending workshops like this, drinking coffee as compared to not drinking coffee, and some definite measures of outcome which are measurable. So wakefulness, staying alert, falling asleep, these are the things. And obviously the time frame is during the workshop. Easy to understand? No problems? Great. Now, this is what Dr. Arnab and Dr. Kapil already showed us. There are these 4-pronged ways in which ICMR looks at any kind of a research. And we'll take one example of each so that we solve the problem very quickly. Now, descriptive research. This text is directly copy-pasted from the ICMR. So there's nothing great and there's nothing novel in this. It is basically exactly as Sir said, aimed at understanding the contours of the problem. So in the practical example, let's imagine somebody wants to study some genetic mutations in some clinical condition. This is exactly as Sir said, some cytokine in something, some kind of a risk factor for something else. These are descriptive research. But ICMR's website says this kind will not be prioritized and they will not give you funding unless they want the answer to that question for some other national goal or something like that. So these kind of descriptive research in which we spend a lot of our time and attention or allocated as thesis topics and all that, these are not going to be hot topics for the ICMR. But let's take an example. Genetic mutations that somehow influence iron metabolism. What kind of mutations are there in Indian people? So like a fishing expedition has value, but this can be also framed into a question like this. So for the next few examples, what will happen is the slides will show you this, and then we'll try and fill that last column with the answers based on the question that we've talked about. So if the question is this, what are the genetic mutations affecting iron metabolism in Indian people with anemia? What can we write in the third column? People with anemia, obviously. And then you can qualify. If you're an obstetrician, you're interested in pregnant people with anemia. If you're a pediatrician, children with anemia. If you're something else in the community, everybody in the community, so on and so forth. And exposure or intervention. Is it an intervention or an exposure here? Exposure. Because the investigator is not going to give a mutation. So what is the exposure? Genetic mutations which affect iron metabolism. Because my sum total of knowledge in genetics is 0. So let's just imagine that there are some mutations like this. I don't know if there are any. Compared to anything? So now there's the catch. If you start comparing to people, the people have already been put in the P. Many researchers do it like this. If you're trying to answer people with mutations versus people without mutations, now that's a different question from what we framed in the previous thing. So basically what we're looking at is Indian people with anemia, and the exposure is not going to be the mutation because they already have it. What you're looking for is the mutation. So the outcome is the mutation. And in what time frame? At the time of evaluation. These mutations may happen 2 months after you evaluated, but you are going to assess the mutation only at the time point in which you looked at this. You understand? So the exposure has already occurred. So it's not that we are going to wait and see. We are only going to see, detect, measure that exposure of mutation. So for a simple descriptive kind of a question, this is what it will look like. You put all these 3 components together in an English language sentence, starting with a capital letter, ending with a question mark, it will look like this. What are the genetic mutations affecting iron metabolism in Indian people with anemia? Make sense? Clear? Any doubt about this? If you were to look at mutations in people with anemia compared to people without anemia, that's a different question. It's related to the first question that we're talking about, but that's a different question. In that, the population will be people in India, and the exposure will be people having the mutation, and the comparison will be people who don't have the mutation, and then you look at certain outcomes to see whether iron metabolism is actually changed by that or not. Clear? So, yeah. I mean, you can put whatever you like. I'm just giving you a very basic example. Put whatever outcomes you want. They have to be something which can be measured. That is the only point. Now, moving one gear further. So, discovery research. This is the second thing that the ICMR is keen on funding, and they're funding a lot of it. So, this is from the website. It is designed to find interventions, some basic research, preclinical studies, and all these phytopharmaceuticals and all that come up over there. So, let's carry our example further. So, some kind of descriptive research suggested that some of these people with anemia are having some of these mutations which affect iron metabolism. So the next logical thing in our mind could be, could this impact the way we treat it? Could this impact the response to therapy? Because if they're not metabolizing iron properly and you're going on pumping iron tablets into them, their anemia may not improve. So that is the level at which we are trying to now find a solution to this discovery related question. So help us to fill this box now, third box. What shall we write here? So it's people with anemia, obviously. Any intervention or exposure? Okay. And then what will happen as a comparison? I'm going too fast because we got 25 minutes for the lecture and Dean sir said 25 minutes hai na, 10 mein khatam karna hai. So that is why I'm running like Vande Bharat.
Sir, this is the most important.
So we can slow down? Okay. So help us then. So let me go back to the example. So you are trying to see whether knowledge of these mutations in some way can impact the response to therapy. And we're trying to frame a question for that. So let's frame it. So people with anemia, that is clear, right? Is there an intervention or an exposure? What is it? You're going to give a therapy and compare it to? But the patients are already in P, in row number 1. So this is what I'm saying. P, the patient and the problem is in row 1. Once it's in row 1, it doesn't come back anywhere else. Are you understanding? So people is with anemia is clear. What's the intervention or exposure? Or no supplementation, then what will be the outcome? So if we do people with getting iron, some people not getting iron, and we look at their anemia, तो फिर इसमें mutation कहाँ है? Yes, sir. Okay. Are you hearing him? Are you hearing him clearly? Or you speak very loudly so that they can hear, because what he's saying is correct.
So the population should be people with anemia getting iron therapy. Exposure should be those who have mutation. Comparison should be without mutation, and outcome should be response to treatment.
Got it? So it will kind of look like this. So people with anemia who are on treatment, like he said, people who have the mutations, and that group, some have the mutations, some don't have the mutations. Both are getting iron therapy. In 3 to 6 months, we'll go and see whose anemia has improved more as compared to the baseline. And what will be the time frame for such an outcome? It will be during the therapy. And if you're interested in things beyond the therapy, you can look for it 3 to 6 months beyond that. Clear? Is this clear? Once you've got the Picot's component clear, now you take all these things which are in the gray box at the end and make a sentence out of it. As always, starting with a capital letter, ending with a question mark. So what sentence can be framed from this? Who wants to try? Don't want to try? So then let me try. So does the genetic profile of people with anemia who are receiving iron therapy affect the response to iron therapy? Simple, straightforward. Any complication? Now, when I give this sentence as a research question, it doesn't mean that everybody has to do it exactly like this. You will have slightly different variations of it, but they'll all come, that sentence in red on top will all come from this box over here. That is why it is very important to put down the contours in the so-called Picot format. And if you added the S for setting, then based on the setting also you can say people in the community or pregnant women or whatever it is. Is this component clear in terms of discovery research? Clear? 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 Shall I move on? Okay. Now the third component is the development research, in which there will be development of interventions for treatment, screening, prevention. So much of what we do probably is in that direction. And this is what the ICMR has given in terms of examples, treatments, phase 2, 3 clinical trials and things like that. So moving our example forward. So in the previous discovery research, we found that people with anemia who have specific mutations are seeming to respond to therapy differently from people who don't have those mutations. So now the researcher amongst us thinks, in that case, can we give iron therapy based on the mutations? Which means, shall we treat people with the mutations differently from people who don't have the mutations? Clear? Is this clear? Not clear? So could iron therapy be based on the genetic mutation profile of these people? So let's fill the boxes. Okay. Okay, so that is one way of looking at it, but then where is the rest of the Picot? So that is like an observational study, right? So people with mutation, you gave them some iron therapy, you looked at their response, you got some answer. But how are we going to make sense of that answer? You can try 2 dosages, but now that is answering the question about which dosage works better or worse. It's not answering our question, which was, can iron therapy be based on the mutation profile? So that is the comparison of 2 different doses of iron therapy in people with the genetic mutation. and then use a higher dose than that. But first you have to show that the standard dose doesn't work, na? So that is one way of looking at it. So here is one example. So people with anemia in the community, some of them are exposed by having that mutation, some are exposed not having that mutation, and then you give them both iron therapy and you see whether one group does better than the other. Clear? Will this answer the question? Yes, no? Yes or no? So this is the kind of question I think Dr. Vivek will talk to us about. This is the format of a clinical trial. And you can choose your outcomes. Some will reflect efficacy in terms of, hemoglobin increase, some parameters of iron metabolism which will change, safety, side effects, adverse events, and so on and so forth. Sometimes people might also throw in cost because you might have to use more expensive interventions and things like that. And the time frame again will be during the treatment and beyond the treatment. Clear? Clear? So how to frame a question out of these 5 things in the PICOT? Back rows. Back row, please. Try to construct a question from these words and phrases. No? Nobody wants to try? So I have given it a shot. In Indian people with anemia, what is the efficacy and safety of iron therapy based on the genetic mutations? Even though the question is not stating in comparison to people without the mutations, that is to save words and space, but it is understood from the PICOT that we are comparing without. The problem is you can also do this kind of a study in a non-trial fashion by simply looking at one arm. You took people who had the mutation, you gave them iron therapy, you got some result, but what's the downside of that? So we have no idea what to compare it with. That is why in life and in research, there is almost always a comparison. We may not state the comparison very clearly, but intrinsically and intuitively there is a comparison. Even if we were to ask a simple, crude question, is today a hot day? And your answer is yes or no, you are intrinsically comparing the thermal comfort that you have today against a standard thermal comfort that you have. And if today is worse than that, it's a hot day. If today is equal or better than that, it's not a hot day. You understand? So there is also, a very famous epidemiologist who was once asked, how is your wife? And his response was, as compared to what? So all the males are very happy, but don't be. This experiment should not be tried at home. Right. So coming to the fourth leg, the delivery research. This is from the ICMR's website. The delivery research is once you find that something seems to work in a research setting, you actually implement and deploy it and see what is happening. So in the context of our silly example, the development research in the previous slide showed us that iron therapy based on some genetic mutations, for people who have those mutations, seems to work better than the traditional therapy. Now, can this be implemented for your patients in the hospital or in the community and so on and so forth? Question is clear? Yeah? So what should be the elements of the PICOT? It is clear that I have ended confusing people more than what they came with. है ना? So if somebody came thinking कि हम इस workshop के बाद डॉक्टर अरब से बजट का सीख लेंगे, अब सोच रहे हैं यार ग्रांट ही लिखें. So what will be the elements here? No try? Let us give it a shot. So people with anemia now in the hospital, in the community, in your kind of setting, treatment which is based on mutations by studying the mutations and giving it as compared to the traditional treatment approaches. But now look at the outcomes. Now because it's delivery research, you are not just focused on efficacy and safety alone. You are actually more interested in effectiveness. What's the difference between efficacy and effectiveness? Let me clarify with an example. Every time you look at the manufacturers of cars who make their brochures and they tell you the mileage per liter of petrol or diesel or gas or whatever, what number do they give? Any car. Kitna? How many kilometers per liter? Kitna? Andaze se? So 25 kilometers per liter से तो कोई देता ही नहीं है ना? देखा है कभी? 25 से कभी देखा आपने किसी के ऐड में? नहीं देखा ना? When you drive that car, how much are you getting? Why? He is claiming 26, you are getting 16. Why? Because his 26 is not a lie. That 26 he has got by running it on a slope downwards, no AC, windows rolled up, constant speed, no brakes applied, gear changes are not happening. He gets 26 and he puts that. You drive in all these opposite of these settings, you get 16. So that 26 is the efficacy, the potential effect of that particular car or intervention or whatever. And that 16 is effectiveness. What you get in the real world when you run it in operational conditions of the real world, including some patients don't take the therapy, some drop out, some doses get missed, sometimes people take half the dose, for some days they don't take, so on and so forth. So what you get in the real world setting is the effectiveness. So for delivery research, it is not enough just to document efficacy. Haan ji, hemoglobin बढ़ गया. You also need to see what would happen in the real world setting, and that is why effectiveness is more important than efficacy. Efficacy is much easier to measure. Effectiveness is much more complicated to demonstrate. And for delivery, there will be also things like feasibility, cost effectiveness, acceptability, and things like that, which will come into play. Because based on this, the question here is, what is the effectiveness now of iron therapy based on genetic mutation profile in Indian people with anemia? This is one of the examples. You can add more words by saying as compared to traditional iron therapy, and so on and so forth, and things like this. But is the broad outline clear? 4 types of research that ICMR is interested in. The idea is there for all the 4. You need to put the PICOT elements together and then frame a question. Clear? Crystal clear? Good. Let us quickly summarize and all that. So research ideas cannot straight enter into a research protocol. They have to first be framed in the format of answerable research questions. One good format for that is PICOT or PICOTs. The good thing about this PICOT framework is that if you look at the elements carefully, it will almost automatically also tell you what study design is optimal for it. So if you think of the examples that I've given, almost intuitively it will tell you which study design will work best to answer that particular question. And then PICOT also sets the boundaries for your research. So for example, your research now has to play within these boundaries. If your outcomes are efficacy and safety, and your research didn't find any evidence of efficacy, you cannot write in your conclusion, but it is cheaper than the other one. If cheap or cost was not part of your outcome which was measured, because it's not in your PICOT, you can't just say, I found nothing, but by the way, it's very easy to give, and it is very patient friendly, and it is cost. That is not what you studied. You understand? So if the time frame of your PICOT was 3 to 6 months of evaluation, you cannot suddenly end up with your research saying, my data is available for 2 weeks. After that, everybody went to China, so I am not having any data for beyond 2 weeks. So PICOT will also help you to frame the contours and the limits and the boundaries of the research that you're going to do based on this question. One caveat is sometimes not everything in the world can be hung onto this PICOT framework. So there are many more complex examples, and I'm sure all of you will jump up and say, what about this cell-free DNA in cancer and things like that? But by and large, broadly, everything can be fixed into this PICOT framework. One research idea sometimes may have multiple PICOT questions. So your project proposal may not be just answering one thing. It may be 2, 3 things. You're looking at genetic mutations, you're also looking at skin color, you're also looking at something else. Then frame these questions separately and then put them all together. So for your first idea, this is the PICOT, second, this is the PICOT, and so on and so forth. Clear? Shall I shut up? Okay, great. So if there is any burning question and sir permits, we'll take it. If not, then we will take it together at the end.
हाँ, लास्ट स्लाइड दो उनकी. तो मैंने अपनी अभी बैठे बैठे सोचा कि हमारा जो प्लान था कि एक कंटिन्यूटी ऑफ थॉट का, तो आफ्टर लिसनिंग टू यू आई विल स्टार्ट माय प्रेजेंटेशन फ्रॉम योर स्लाइड्स, लुकिंग इट फ्रॉम अ डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव. पहले 5 मिनट यहाँ लगाएंगे, अगले 5 मिनट मेरी कोई पीपीटी नहीं है, एक पेपर है, वो मैं उसकी फाइंडिंग्स कुछ आपसे शेयर करूँगा. राइट? तो अभी ये लास्ट है ना? हाँ. तो अभी आपको ये पिकॉट फॉर्मेट में बताया गया कि कैसे रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस जो हैं ड्राफ्ट करने हैं. My, whatever experience in different committees I have seen, सबसे पहली बात तो ये है कि आपका जो रिसर्च क्वेश्चन है, क्या उसके लिए whether you need population based study or not. I have seen that because clinicians they are fascinated कि कुछ population based करना है, तो रिसर्च क्वेश्चन कुछ भी हो, they want to say कि चलो कम्युनिटी में चल के करते हैं. The first thing is to answer your research question, do you need a population based study or it can be answered based in your hospital premises. अभी ये last था, what is the effectiveness of iron therapy based on genetic profile in Indian people with anemia. आपको research question समझा दिया. Now to जो PICOT में S है setting, इस क्वेश्चन को आंसर करने के लिए whether you need to go to community or it can be done in hospital setting. What do you think? हाँ, but see effectiveness of iron therapy based on genetic profile, right? मतलब अगर आप एक जो ये बोलना चाह रहे थे कि आपकी जो ideal condition में when car is running, then it is efficacy. But in government hospital, when patients are coming, they are anemic. Yes, it is more stringent compared to the population based. But if you don't have any evidence, directly going to population may not be good idea. Once you have some clinical evidence, then have a good sample size hospital setting, that whether people with anemia and based on genetic profile, you have a first study in your hospital and the population in the hospital can be representative here. And then when you have that evidence and then you want to go to population, whether, because when you go to the population, what are the real challenges? The real challenges are, with respect to this question, whatever genetic profile variation you encounter in hospital setting, it is concentrated, more prevalence. But when you go to community, you may not get, and different communities may be having different type of variations. So you are to answer this question, if your initial studies show that you conducted a study to know the prevalence of genetic variation, say in Indian population or in North India, South India, then you will have some mapping that where are more variations. These genetic mutations are prevalent in which area. So if genetic prevalence mutation is prevalent in some area, it will be good idea to do more research over there. But if there is no genetic mutation or very less genetic mutation in some particular region, then why to burn your resources in that area? So anemia, for example, this is the question of anemia. Anemia is widely prevalent. Anemia is widely prevalent in India in all the states. So, but the one of the question was that which intervention is effective. It also depends upon the prevalence of the condition. Whether you the question was that if there is genetic mutation, should you follow a different treatment compared to the others? Now, if the prevalence of anemia is very high and if the prevalence of mutation is very low, then even before conducting any cost effectiveness study, you know that the problem is rampant, and it will not be possible that in all the dispensaries, health centers, you first test for genetic mutation and then treat them. It is not a possible viable solution. In that situation, you say that you can develop an algorithm that anemia is rampant, we treat by the standard protocols, and then if there is no response after some time, then you follow the second line, maybe they should be tested for genetic mutation, why they are not responding. So going to population is not straightforward. This is what I want to say, that if whether you look at description or delivery or implementation, whatever these 4 Ds, first thing you should consider whether you need to go to the population or not. And then if I take you to the, I just was googling and this good paper, ये zoom हो जाएगा ना? हाँ. ठीक है. So this is I got this systematic review of population based studies of infective endocarditis. Actually we can learn from the failures. अब ये जिसने भी ये systematic review किया, the problem was infective endocarditis, and you look at the conclusion. Evidence from well-planned representative epidemiological surveys is scarce in many countries. Available studies suggest a challenging distribution of underlying valvular heart diseases in patients with infective endocarditis. मतलब systematic review किया, जितनी भी studies आई, उसके end में ये है कि these were not well planned. So what is the failure in planning? Conclusions. Conclusions जहाँ नजर आए बताना, नीचे ही होगा ना. हाँ ये आ गया ना. So our चश्मा ही लगाना पड़ेगा, वहाँ नजर आ जाएगा. चलो. Our review provides the first summary of IE population based studies from different investigations. Evidence from well planned representative surveys is scarce. ये तो वही बोल रहा है. It does not support the contention. इसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा देखना पड़ेगा. What they are saying is कि जो problem है कि वो population को define नहीं करते. All population based studies are prone to incomplete case ascertainment, misclassification. Definitions जो हैं, case definitions, वो ठीक से यूज नहीं करते, और representation जो है वो ठीक नहीं है. 15 studies थी, 15 की studies में ये सब में ये problem आया. And this we have seen that even whatever studies are done from PGI itself, sometimes कोई DM का thesis है, ये कुछ है, and there is collaboration. What we find is कि जब studies plan हो रही हैं तो sample size calculate कर लिया कि इस particular disease condition के लिए ये sample size चाहिए. उसके बाद clinicians के मन में सिर्फ वही sample size है, representativeness नहीं है. How to get that? Population based studies means that you have to get representative population following the stringent the design जो है उसका वो follow करना है, और representativeness होनी चाहिए. They tend to say अच्छा वहाँ कैंप लगा लेंगे, वहाँ वो स्कूल में चले जाएंगे, कुछ पेशेंट्स वहाँ से मिल जाएंगे, कुछ वहाँ से मिल जाएंगे, किसी स्लम में चले गए, अर्बन एरिया में चले गए, and we will complete the sample. That is not, I mean, getting the required number of sample does not make it a population based study. Population based study में जैसा उन्होंने बताया कि किस population में you have to define your population, you have to define what disease condition or whatever you want to do. अगर वो सब करेंगे और फिर वो methodology follow करेंगे तभी आपका population based study होगा. And many times we have seen कि जब even when we see in IEC committee और ICRC committee कि जब plan कर रहे हैं तब हम अकेले ही plan कर रहे हैं, और जब एग्जीक्यूट करना है फिर आपको याद आती है अच्छा इसमें तो ये उस डिपार्टमेंट का भी चाहिए था, उस डिपार्टमेंट का भी चाहिए था, फिर हम कोलैबोरेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं. दैट इज नॉट द वे. आपको कहीं साउथ इंडियन खाना खाने जाना है, कहीं आप पूछते हो यार यहाँ ऑथेंटिक साउथ इंडियन कहाँ है, ऑथेंटिक चाइनीज कहाँ है. तो आजकल जितनी भी कमेटीज हैं, अर्नब को पता है ICMR रिव्यू कमेटी क्या बोलती है, बट ये स्टैंडर्ड प्रैक्टिस है कोई भी proposal when it comes to any committee, they will see कि जो research question है, research methodology है, उसके commensurate whether the team is balanced or not. If you want to do study in community, it is mandatory you have some person from the community medicine, public health side who should collaborate with you. And then there should, for population based study, there has to be some population. And the consent of the population, the rapport with the population is very important, which is not possible for the clinicians. So that type of collaboration right in the beginning is very important. And then the community medicine person can tell you the dynamics of how to do this project in the community setting. There are many challenges. Collection of simple blood sample is not easy. Ask Dr. Pankaj Malhotra, who had done study on hypertension prevalence in rural area. सुबह 6 बजे उठकर पॉपुलेशन में पहुंच जाता था जब वो आपको फास्टिंग शुगर सैंपल्स और ये सब कुछ करना है. सो डिपेंडिंग अपॉन योर रिसर्च क्वेश्चन, चैलेंजेस ऑफ द कम्युनिटी, हाउ टू, यहाँ तो हम प्रपोजल्स में लिख देते हैं 10 ml ब्लड निकाल लो, हमें कुछ फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता. कम्युनिटी में 10 ml ब्लड इसकी पूरी बोतल निकाल ली. हाउ टू ड्रॉ अ ब्लड सैंपल इन द कम्युनिटी सेटिंग, all these are very sensitive and challenging things. So if you want to plan a population based study, it may be as simple as description. Even then you have to have full team, and if you want to do implementation research जो delivery में आ रहे हैं, then you have to have health system on board. जिस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में आप करने जा रहे हैं वहाँ का सिविल सर्जन, वहाँ की टीम, स्टेट से परमिशंस लेके, that team who has to implement in their area, they have to be on board. That is the prime requirement. ICMR तो बहुत मांगता है कि implementation research करना है, then implementers are on the driving seat. So ये चीजें थोड़ी सी ध्यान रखनी है 10 मिनट में जो मैं आपसे शेयर कर सकता हूँ. बाकी anything you want me to add on? अब वो एसोसिएशन रिसर्च है, अब आप सिंपल क्रॉस सेक्शनल सर्वे करेंगे, केस कंट्रोल करेंगे, कोहार्ट करेंगे, एक्सपेरिमेंट करेंगे, इंटरवेंशन डिजाइन, ऑल दैट डिपेंड अपॉन योर रिसर्च क्वेश्चन कि आप कैसा रिसर्च क्वेश्चन होगा उसी के हिसाब से आप लेंगे. और उसमें जो एथिकल स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, अगर सिंपल आपने स्कूल बेस्ड स्टडी करना है तो आई हैव सीन मैनी प्रपोजल्स कि अच्छा स्कूल में जाएंगे, आपको इंक्लूजन एक्सक्लूजन क्राइटेरिया है कुछ कि आपको हेल्दी चिल्ड्रन लेने हैं, सपोज healthy means those who are not having a particular disease condition. तो अब एज ग्रुप बच्चों का कुछ भी हो, आप बोलते हैं उनको सेल्फ एडमिनिस्ट्रेड क्वेश्चन दे देंगे, अपने आप ही हाँ ना लिख देंगे कि उनको ये प्रॉब्लम है या नहीं. नो, दैट इज नॉट द राइट वे. आई मीन every subject to whom you want to see whether included or excluded should pass through the standard examination, test and questionnaire. Whether it has to be self administered or interviewer has to do that, it will depend upon कि आप सवाल क्या पूछ रहे हो. 50 सवाल पूछ रहे हो और एक 10 साल के बच्चे को बोलते हो वो अपने आप हाँ ना कर देगा. So this is not the way population based studies are done. And then आपका वो ethics दूसरा आ जाता है. स्कूल में जाएंगे, अब आप जो है आप कहते हैं कि 10 बच्चे इस क्लास से, 10 बच्चे उस क्लास से. वी आर नॉट वरीड कि ये दिस इज वन ऑफ द पैरामीटर कि आप रूटीन टीचिंग डिस्टर्ब नहीं करेंगे. बट वी आर नॉट वरीड. गए हैं, पूरी क्लास को हम डिस्टर्ब कर देंगे, हमें तो अपने सब्जेक्ट भेज दो, हम उनका सर्वे करेंगे, क्लास में उनकी टीचिंग सफर होती है नहीं होती है. वी आर नॉट वरीड. सो योर डिजाइन हैज टू बी इन सच ए वे दैट you are giving opportunity to all the students in a particular class. आप अपनी मल्टी फेज जो भी सैम्पलिंग करनी है इस तरीके से कीजिए. अल्टीमेटली जो सेक्शन चूज किया है उस सेक्शन में इंक्लूजन एक्सक्लूजन ना कीजिए. जस्ट इमेजिन कि एक क्लास में आप बोलते हैं सेक्सुअल प्रैक्टिसेस देखनी है, उसमें से 10 बच्चे उठा लेते हैं. हाउ ऑल अदर चिल्ड्रन विल व्यू कि यार इन 10 बच्चों से क्या पूछा, इनको अलग से क्यों बुलाया. So if in that class you are including everyone, giving opportunity, then वो sensitivity जो है you will address that. So based upon the research question and setting, there are many nuances and sensitivities that you have to address for population based studies. Otherwise population में एक भी छोटी सी भी गड़बड़ हो गई, it will boomerang. वो आपको community में enter ही नहीं करने देंगे, वो reaction हो जाएगा पूरा कि ये देखो ये आके क्या कर रहे हैं. तो ये थोड़ी सी सेंसिटिविटीज हैं while planning. the population based study.
Let me ask you one very
Hmm.
straightforward
Hmm.
question.
Hmm.
How can the School of Public Health help our clinicians or researchers in collaborating? And it brings to a very important point, which I believe that we should be stressing, is always of collaboration. Please remember the projects which are interdepartmental, interinstitutional, multinational. Anyway, I'm not looking at, yes, exactly, but at least, across institutions, if not across the countries, would be always welcome. So how can you help us actually, because there are lots of people who do surveys, kidney disease, heart disease, surgical issues, etc., etc. So how can you be, I'm pretty sure about it because lots of people are there and everybody has to find, but how can you?
I will say that to keep the life simple, if you think that your research question should be addressed in the community setting, so think you have to involve community medicine, right? You write to the head of the, there are two ways. If you know that a particular faculty member is working in this particular field, you already know that, you can approach that faculty member directly. There is no administrative bureaucracy here. You can approach that faculty member directly and then you can develop the project. But if you are not sure कि किसे approach करें, then you can write to the head of the department. Head of the department can guide you कि इस question के लिए फलां faculty member काम कर रहा है, तो you can approach that and it can be done. And if you get any problem कि आपको कुछ ऐसा लगता है कि वो cooperation नहीं मिल रहा है या कुछ, you again report back to the head of the department. We can solve the problem. Basically अभी हमारे इतने faculty members हैं और बहुत से department के साथ हमारे projects चल रहे हैं, collaborations चल रही हैं already, but still those who are new members जिनको नहीं पता community medicine का, तो you can write to the head of the department. We will help. Simple, एक one stop solution.
Sir, being a research administrator, I have a query to you. You can guide our participant today that World Health Organizations or UN plays a very, or sometimes some foundations like Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. Okay, so this play a very important role, particularly in case of population-based thing research. So how can you guide us to approach them or to get a multi-million-dollar grant for a successful, answering a successful research question which may be pertinent to our country?
बिल्कुल मैं I got your point. उसके लिए आपके पास दोपहर को अभी शंकर प्रिंजा आ रहा है, ठीक है? He is the best person. I think he is the one, I think, in the entire institute most funded by DHR and all the funding organizations. तो but जो ट्रेंड है हमारे डिपार्टमेंट में, और भी फैकल्टी मेंबर्स हैं जिनके पास ऐसे फंडेड प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, तो जनरली व्हाट हैपेंस इज it is the credibility of the individual faculty members and their relationship with the funding agencies. So they get to know कि क्या कॉल है उनका, अपना वो ऐसे उसके हिसाब से चलते हैं और उनका फंडिंग हो जाता है, which is not, but it does not mean कि फंडिंग एजेंसीज जो हैं उन्होंने सिर्फ एंट्री जो है बाकी के लिए बैन किया हुआ है. इट इज़ नॉट लाइक दैट, बिकॉज जनरली जैसे BMJ है वो इंडिविजुअल्स को ऐसे फंड नहीं करते. They come through the institutes like that. But अगर किसी फैकल्टी मेंबर में उनका बहुत इंटरेस्ट है, फैकल्टी मेंबर मीन्स कि उसके जो रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस ऐसे हैं जिसमें उनका बहुत इंटरेस्ट है. अब शंकर का क्यों है? क्योंकि हेल्थ इकोनॉमिक्स इज अ न्यू एरिया. एवरीवन वांट्स टू नो द इकोनॉमिक एविडेंस कि मेरी ये इंटरवेंशन जो है ये इफेक्टिव है या नहीं है, कॉस्ट इफेक्टिवनेस का क्या स्टेटस है. तो वो उसने कॉस्टिंग में एक्सपर्टाइज है, कॉस्ट इफेक्टिवनेस देखने में एक्सपर्टाइज है. इवन इस हॉल में कई लोग बैठे होंगे, कितने ही डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, हर कोई कहता है कि आप मेरे डिपार्टमेंट में मेरी ये इंटरवेंशन का थोड़ा कॉस्ट इफेक्टिवनेस का करके दीजिए. तो ही हैज़ डेवलप्ड दैट एक्सपर्टाइज. एंड DHR, मतलब वन ऑफ द चेयरपर्सन ऑफ DHR, मैं भी मेंबर था किसी DHR कमेटी में, he said ये जितने करोड़ मांगेगा मैं दे दूंगा, मतलब उसकी ये क्रेडिबिलिटी है, and he is doing good research, so he is the best person to answer this question. मैंने तो अर्नब को बोला था मुझे क्यों बुला रहे हो, मैं तो प्रोजेक्ट अप्लाई ही नहीं करता ग्रांट्स लेता ही नहीं है, मेरा थोड़ा सा इंटरेस्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में ज़्यादा चला गया है, मुझे ये रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट्स करने में मज़ा नहीं आता, लेकिन इतनी कमेटीज़ में हम देखते हैं कि प्रोजेक्ट्स फेल क्यों हो रहे हैं, पेपर पब्लिश क्यों नहीं हो रहे हैं, तो वो रीजंस तो सेम ही है ना, कि हमारे जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं और पेपर्स हैं दे आर पुअर इन डिज़ाइन एंड एग्जीक्यूशन के समय में जो चीज़ें हमें होनी चाहिए हम पहले से परसीव ही नहीं करते। एंडो का मैं एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ, आई अप्रिशिएट द प्रीवियस हेड आल्सो, कि इनका एक बड़ा अच्छा है कि इनकी डिपार्टमेंटल कमेटी ऐसी बनी हुई है कि स्टूडेंट्स के कोई भी थीसिस हैं कुछ है सारे मिलकर डिस्कस करते हैं, उसमें अगर कोई एक्सटर्नल डिपार्टमेंट का भी है, जैसे मुझे इन्होंने कई बार बुलाया कि ये प्रोजेक्ट में कम्युनिटी मेडिसिन से अगर मैं इन्वॉल्व हूँ तो वो डिस्कशन के लिए मुझे भी उन्होंने बुलाया, कई बार इनकी मीटिंग्स अटेंड की, तो वो एक हेल्दी प्रैक्टिस है। अदरवाइज हम क्या होता जा रहा है कि हम इंटरेक्ट ही नहीं करना चाहते, हम सोचते हैं कि ये मेरा है, मैं किसी दूसरे को क्यों इन्वॉल्व करूं, मेरा स्टूडेंट है दूसरे स्टूडेंट इसको क्यों सुने। तो वो जब ऐसा रिसर्च एटमॉस्फेयर बनता है जिसके अंदर सभी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं और जितने भी लोगों को इन्वॉल्व करना है वो आप उनको कॉल करते हैं और सब डिस्कस करते हैं, तो वो प्रोजेक्ट ज़्यादा अच्छा डेवलप हो जाता है। तो जो पहला क्वेश्चन सर ने पूछा था वो ये है कि आपको लगता है कि भी इस क्वेश्चन में कम्युनिटी मेडिसिन का ज़रूरत है, यू कैन इन्वॉल्व अस और एनी फैकल्टी मेंबर, everyone will be happy to contribute.
So I realize that population-based studies are not that simple the way people perceive it, right? I know many investigators are doing population, like for example, you gave the example of school children doing some parameter or doing the reference ranges in some school children. So I don't think everybody is taking a person or faculty from the community medicine. Even I have seen the projects which come to our department for biochemistry parameters. There we are just, giving the services, but at least it has come to my knowledge. So don't you think it should be the under the purview of the IAEC that whenever there is a population-based study, they should tell the PI that a person from community-based medicine should be included?
IEC बोलती है, I am member of IEC, और जब तक मैं मेंबर नहीं था मेरे भी नेगेटिव ही इमेज था IEC का, लेकिन अब तो मैं एक साल हो गया है करीबन मैं IEC का मेंबर हूँ, और मुझे लगता है ये IEC बहुत मेहनत कर रही है, वाकई बहुत मेहनत कर रही है। और प्रॉब्लम उल्टा भी हो जाता है, प्रॉब्लम उल्टा ये हो जाता है, आई विल नॉट नेम द डिपार्टमेंट, नाउ one faculty member who is basically community medicine person then joined a clinical department, and now community based, question is community based, for example it is X department and you want to do study on nutrition, whether vitamin A or D is required or not, and that is no link with that clinical department. But since the background is community medicine, you are doing that research and getting funding from Bill Melinda because you have your personal relations. Now whether that should be allowed or not. So IEC just says that, okay, this is not fair, you should reconsider. But IEC does not ban, you just say once or twice. But then if people want to do that research, IEC says that okay, go ahead. IEC cannot say कि no, you cannot do this. आपने एक बार गाइड कर दिया, दो बार कि ऐसा नहीं, कि जो रेलेवेंट डिपार्टमेंट हैं they should become PI, बट उसके बावजूद भी करना चाहते हैं तो IEC कहते हैं ठीक है अभी करो। तो इसलिए IEC ये क्वेश्चन आता है, इवन यहाँ तक भी आता है कि अब पीडियाट्रिक्स और अडल्ट में कोई क्वेश्चन ऐसा है कि जो पीडियाट्रिक्स एज ग्रुप में है और अडल्ट कर रहे हैं, या अडल्ट एज ग्रुप में है पीडियाट्रिक्स वाले कर रहे हैं, देन दे से कि भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट की बात है। आप अपने जो डोमेन में है उसी में आप रिस्ट्रिक्ट कीजिए ना, आगे ना जाइए। तो ये आईसी में आती हैं बातें, आईसी के डोमेन में तो हैं ही हैं, नो डाउट अबाउट इट।
Because why I'm asking this question is that I am staying in sector 38 now in 24. So everybody is targeting PGI study sector 38. The people of sector 38 are already full as also 6 महीने पहले टेस्ट करके आप फिर से आ गए. So I think this is one of the comment what we are when we are doing our huge study phase. So might be some more criteria will be there. We'll be more than happy to understand from that.
Yes, yes. This is a very relevant question. This is the importance of involving community medicine right from the beginning. When you are at this research question phase, okay, and one thing just comes to you that you want to do in community. What community, which community, where you don't know anything. Involve community medicine right at that stage, so that your research question can be filtered. Basically, you have to see which population in the community you want to target, what should be the setting, it is school based or population based, whatever. All those things you have to answer. And then important thing, the point of saturation you are mentioning. If we are doing research without being accountable to the community, we गए जाकर ब्लड सैंपल ले लिए, उस समय वो पूछते हैं दे एक्सपेक्ट फॉर ए रिपोर्ट, हाँ हम दे देंगे रिपोर्ट, और 6-6 महीने तक रिपोर्ट नहीं देते, तो फिर जब अगली बार जाओगे तो वही है ना, वो वोट मांगने वाली भी तो यही बात है, ये वोट मांगने आ गए पिछले तो 5 साल में तो कुछ किया नहीं। तो हम अगर सिर्फ सैंपल लेते रहेंगे एंड वी डोंट गिव एनीथिंग इन रिटर्न टू द कम्युनिटी, अगर आप इन रिटर्न कुछ दे रहे हैं, उनको कुछ सर्विस भी मिल रही है, कुछ बेनिफिट हो रहा है, देन दे वेट फॉर यू कि ये डॉक्टर साहब आए थे, देखो उन्होंने सैंपल लिया, मुझे बताया ये प्रॉब्लम है, मुझे हेल्प किया, नाउ आई एम गेटिंग बेनिफिट आउट ऑफ इट। इफ यू डेवलप दैट टाइप ऑफ ट्रस्ट विद द कम्युनिटी, कम्युनिटी वेट करती है फिर कि वो कब आएंगे, है ना, वो आएंगे सनम तो हमारा कुछ फायदा होगा नहीं तो गए पर डंडा लेके आए फिर तो
So with the same analogy, actually, when we are talking about the community survey and community medicine, people should be there. When we are collaborating the various CRIC institutions in and around Tri-City, what is happening? The all basic science institute coming with this some product and finally came, Doctor Sahab, हमने ये product study किया, इसका ये है, अब आप इसका human study करें. So what I want to suggest our colleagues them, tell them, you please don't bring it to the picture when they already published some paper. Now you are asking us do something. So it is not going to help us. Rather, we should unite and tell them, whenever you start product, please discuss with us. For example, I visited many times CDRI, Lucknow, very good collaboration with them. So one scientist came and told, Doctor Sahab, we developed a drug which reduces 8% of body weight over the year. I go, very good. So what is the plan? Sir, can you study in human trial or human study? I told him, Doctor Sahab, already we have a drug reducing 25% of body weight in 1 year. What your this 8% will help you. So this is the best example to explain them that if you are planning any project, please bring into the picture the clinician beforehand. Rather than you publish 3 papers, you filed a patent and now coming to PGI that please try our drug or test our drug. So I think you should be very clear this message to the basic scientists that they should tell them very clearly that's how things are working.
बस सफर के शुरू से साथ मिलके चलेंगे तो बढ़िया रिसर्च होगी। अगर आप कहेंगे कि बीच में कोई आ जाए तो सफर तो कट जाता है पर वो आनंद नहीं आता।
So exactly with the same note, कि whenever we are planning a research proposal, the collaboration, the framing of the research question starts from the very beginning. The collaboration should start from the very beginning and not for a particular project or a particular time frame. It needs to be a long-term collaboration between the individual ideas, individual departments, individual institutes. So
Thank you, Professor Agarwal, for the comprehensive session. Our next session will be presented by Dr. Vivek Kumar, who will discuss clinical trials and delivery research, two critical areas in the research field. This session will focus on the practical aspects of conducting trial and delivering research outcomes effectively. Let's welcome Dr. Vivek Kumar.
So, I don't think in literal sense I'll be doing justice to the topic in the sense that clinical trial and delivery. It is more of, because it is not like this that, I have joined as a faculty member in PGI and of course it is highly likely that I'm going to be specially trained in one particular subject. And there are so many research questions. If you want to know about research questions about any field, you just open one guideline. It has one section at the end, recommendations for future and other things. So then I just look at those research questions. Okay, so we don't know how does XYZ perform in this disease. So let's design a clinical trial. And then I write a clinical trial and I get a funding and I'm ready to do it. But what is my base? That I have just 1 month back joined the department. And what is my experience? This is my experience that I have a DM degree in this particular subject. Now, it actually it's, I would call our team's experience. I'm not here as Vivek Kumar, I'm here as a representative of the group that we have created over the last 15 years, the foundation of which has allowed us to achieve something which I think is for everybody to emulate, and this will just go on to show that things can happen in PGI, and if we are dedicated, things can happen in PGI, and I don't need any external influence, training, etc. So I will start with what are the professional objectives of doctors or faculty members or doctors at PGI. Now this is something which has been told to us on rounds by people who have taught us through ages. And the two broad professional objectives are to improve care of patients and to further the cause of science. Now, how do we improve? Okay. So how do we improve care of patients? That we can improve by improving access to established means of care. That's okay. I think it will. Or established procedure to offer current standards of care. At times it is happening, there is something which is a standard of care, but it is just not available. So we need to establish procedures by which we can offer that care to our patients, because that would be a care gap. Now, for furthering the cause of science, what we actually do or what we need to do is that we have clinical observations that this is something which is happening in our patients. So we need to uncover mechanisms for those observations. And based on that scientific concept, we need to explore, devise and test interventions to target those mechanisms. And if this is our professional objective, what do we need to do? What we need to do is that we should be knowing what is actually happening to our patients in real time. And what is happening to our patients in real time? This is not just a theoretical construct. That we read a book, we read Harrison, we read the chapter on hypertension, diabetes, this is its treatment, we read about pharmacology, etc., etc. And now we know that a patient who has history of 15 years of diabetes is 30% likely to have diabetic nephropathy, retinopathy, etc. This is all theoretical construct. When you actually see patients in practice, you realize that there are so many determinants of outcomes. And I'm just taking the example of acute kidney injury, which is something which is relevant to my specialty. If you look at the presentation, complications and outcomes in patients with acute kidney injury, you see these are not just theoretical, parameters which decide. You have, what are the, most importantly, I would like to highlight here, the drugs which people take in community, which are easily accessible, which are not documented anywhere in the system. And I would say in our context, the most important thing is the socio-economic factors which affect timely access to appropriate care and affordability. If you ask me to point out what determines the outcome of AKI in our setting, I would say this is not etiology, this is not patient factor, this is not environmental exposure, this is not drug, this is the care, affordability and access. Now, how do we know what is happening to our patients? So we understand that it is important for us to know what is happening, but how do we know? Now, in simple words, what we need to do is that we need to keep a serial record of patients' relevant clinical characteristics to a certain disease evolution and outcome. We need to focus, we have one patient, we just need to see his trajectory of disease. What is happening to that patient? What are the outcomes? What are the complications? And how do we do it in clinical practice? I think all of us are doing this in clinical practice. So what do? We ascertain delivered clinical care and outcomes. We then identify gaps. Then we design interventions to actually address those gaps. And these interventions can be novel, or these can be innovative ways to administer something which is already there. So I think this is one aspect which is particularly relevant with respect to delivery research in India, that there are things which are available, but they are just not getting delivered to people for whom they are intended. And once you have designed those interventions, implemented those, or delivered those interventions, you again need to go back and reassess the quality of delivered care and outcomes as to what is the impact it has made. And then you take feedback, and if these things are effective in that setting, then you have to implement it in a widespread manner. That is, you do it something here, then you make it a part of a health program or something like that and implement it across the country. Now, I think this is what is the cycle of clinical care. One important, problem that I think my generation, so it's not, I'm not being critical of anything, but what we have done is that we have slightly deviated from, we have lost sight of the two objectives that we discussed in the beginning. And what has that led to is that we have dissociated research and care to such an extent that we view them as separate entities. However, if you just close your eyes and think what is clinical research, then you see that the cycle of clinical research is this only. This is clinical care, and this is indeed clinical research. So I would say that the foundation of clinical research as an early career researcher, or as a person who has just joined a scientific institute where research is a priority, it should start with identifying a disease or problem. And when you identify a disease or problem, it's important that you do not forget the context. It has to be important in your context. Things I can, as a nephrologist, my problem, the problem that I would like to tackle would be different in US, would be different in El Salvador, would be different in South Africa, would be different in India. Within India, it would be different. In Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh, it would be CKDU, whereas here it might be, diabetic kidney disease. So I think it is very, very important that wherever we are working, it's important that we identify the context. And how do we, lay the foundation? This is the first important thing that we should start with. You have to lay the foundation of a long-term research. Only then we will be able to sustain it. And the foundation can be usually, because the first thing that we need to do is, we need to know what is happening in our patients. And for that, what you need is establishing a registry or a cohort. A cohort is a more structured registry. Okay. And in the context of 4Ds, now this is the cycle of clinical care, which I said is almost equivalent to what we do in clinical research. And if we look at the 4Ds, which the ICMR has proposed, we see that those 4Ds also get covered in this cycle. That if you are following this cycle of clinical care and clinical research, there are different offshoots which will cater to descriptive, discovery, development, and delivery. So it is not something which is different. This is something that we are routinely doing, but maybe we have lost, not exactly lost, but in the rush and everything, and maybe distractions, we have not been able to, put those things conceptually together in our mind. Now we'll start with an example, and this is something which Dr. Arnab specifically requested that, we should give an example. It should not be just that we should do it like this or that. So I'll go back to one departmental meeting that we had in March 2012 when I had just completed 1 year of my tenure as a faculty member. And I'll tell you the summary of that departmental meeting. What it was like, we do so much work, but we are not able to capture it. Where is the data? Now, and we realized that there is a rapidly increasing burden of chronic kidney disease. During that time, our OPD used to finish at 2 o'clock, then it became 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and we realized, and this was something which was across the board, that amongst all the non-communicable diseases, it was the chronic kidney disease which was rapidly rising. But if somebody would ask us, what do you know about chronic kidney disease in India or at your center? we would be blank. We would just talk of theoretical things from textbooks, that 30% is like this or that or this, and somebody will speak from their experiences, but we know that experiences are likely to be biased and are not considered a good, good evidence in the scientific field. And most important thing, as PGI, institutes like PGI and AIIMS, we are often asked questions. Because whenever it comes to policy, they always come to us. What do you think? How should we do it? Now, when you don't have data, you can't suggest anything. So we were not in a position to even, answer questions which were raised by government, that everybody, for example, we would have questions coming from Parliament about what is the government doing to address the burden of chronic kidney disease? And what would we write? We just didn't have anything. We'll just pick up literature from here and there and just put it there. But that is not the way we would be solving that problem. And here is something which I think is very, very important and at the stage of an early career researcher. I think the way we are doing it, that I have this idea, now I am the owner of this idea. And there is nobody else who should work on this idea. I think this kind of mindset needs to go. We are in a department as a team, and in a team, I think as an early career researcher or as an early person, we should see ourselves as a mentee, and we should see everybody else as a mentor or sponsor. And the role that I would say is that the role of other members of the team should be viewed as giving ideas, giving guidance, and providing an enabling environment. And this is because of the academic experience that they have, the management experience that they have. I'm telling you, it is very, very important. Management or administrative management. You cannot, if you're not administratively, sound, you cannot do research. This is what I've realized after 10, 15 years. So you need to learn these things. You have people in the department who have leadership skills. These are important to make teams. Then, of course, those people who have been in those seats for 30 years, they have the networking which you can exploit. You have that opportunity to exploit. And as a mentee, I think as a young researcher, what we should be doing is, we should be initiating discussions and develop those discussions into actionable plans. We should seek active feedback. It should not be like this, that we have left it to for example, the head is told that, I think we do not know about this, why is this happening? So it should not be like this, that we should be waiting for the senior person to again come back to us after 4 weeks to ask what happened to that. We should be giving active feedback. We should be seeking active feedback. Then we need to be goal oriented. We need to be focused on that problem. Nephrology itself is such a big, wide field. If I want to do this, that, everything is going to drown in that. Nothing is going to happen. Then, of course, with respect to this, we need to be disciplined as well as committed. And what this offers mentee is that it helps him gain experience, acquire skill, and get diverse exposure. And one of the most important things which I would say is important at this stage when you are just starting is patience. That you have to be patient. The results are not going to come in even 4 or 5 years. It is going to take time. I think that is very important. And I think you will probably understand the direction of arrows and the width of arrows. The color of arrows, everything. I think there is no need for me to explain. These things are self-explanatory. So I think this is the kind of relationship that we need to nurture in our department. You see, there is a tendency that the juniors will say the seniors are not doing, the seniors will say the juniors are not doing. But it is not like this. But ultimately, I would say the responsibility lies with the mentee. We are sitting here, we are enjoying the accolades of being in a very good institute. It's not because of, it's not just because of us. It's because of people who have created this institute and held it together for decades. So I think this is what we need to gain from their experience. So this is the example. So we started a pilot study. We started a pilot study at PGI. Thereafter, over 5 years, we developed a multicentric study, and then we developed a second phase, which is a maintenance phase of a cohort, which is linked to a biobanking, which has more than 4,000 participants. What I'm saying is this is all started in one department. But this is from starting, everybody is on board, and we are actively collaborating. This is what. And I'll not take much time, so I'll just And what I'll say is that once you have a cohort, it sets the stage. You know what is happening to your patient. You can do, if you have a biobank, you can do biomarker discovery and validation. You can develop important research questions which are there in your local context, and then you can run a multitude of clinical trials, even multicentric clinical trials that we are doing. So, and this is not one man's work. This is work of a team of approximately 50 or 60 individuals across India. And this, if you just look at this, what is being offered under one platform, you will see that this is approximately catering to all of the teams. So, when we are starting for a clinical trial or anything like that, I think it's important that we first identify the most important problem or knowledge gap with respect to that disease or condition, focus on local context, discuss and narrow down important research questions, extensively search and consider applicability or limitations of that theoretical construct in the local context. So local context is very important. Then we should explore whether there are any person or groups who are working on similar things. It should not be like this, we should keep, oh, I have read everything and now I am the boss. I think the first step should start from, are there any persons or groups who are working on similar things? We need to connect, discuss. If required, visit that place and then plan. And then see not how you can lead. See how you can contribute to ongoing work by becoming a participant in the network or utilize others' expertise to start on your own work. You participate, gain experience, then maybe if required seek formal training, utilize participation, utilize this participation to first build a local team. Infrastructure, develop your local network, and as you grow, you will start, once you have this phase, you'll start, getting more and more exposure. You will be able to design, run these clinical trials. These will be small things. And you will also help others develop a clinical trial skill set. But the base for all this is that you have to collaborate to expand and learn. This is just this is just a summary, I would say summary of the different points. Whenever we have to write a research proposal, including a clinical trial, so there would be other things that would be there, but for any proposal, this is the format that we use in our group. Now it's not like this that if you have ICMR, DBT, DST call, then you take that format and write it. No. What I would suggest is that you take a comprehensive format, you first write it in that, and then you adapt it to suit what is needed in their format. Because otherwise what happens is that you tend to miss few things. And those few things you might have missed because of that format, but those few things are going to be picked up by the reviewers. Reviewers are very sharp. They just take 5. They would not have read the proposal. They will just pick up the proposal, just see it for 5 minutes and no, this doesn't make any sense. And the few points which I have highlighted here are few of the mistakes that we have repeatedly made. And I think some of these have already been highlighted. It is very important that you write a summary. They will read nobody is going to read your proposal. They read the summary. The summary gives you, and because summary is actually what is, I would say a reflection of your thought process. How are things are compactly, I would say put in your brain. So summary is very important. I always focus on summary, or we as a group always focus on summary. Then is, of course, the research question and hypothesis, which is very important, which needs to be very, very objective. The objectives need to be stated very clearly. And within the study setting and population, one important thing that we have learned, especially from the international grants that our group has been able to get, is we specify that this is the study population, but we usually do not justify why we have taken that study population. So we need to provide written justification for why have we taken that study population. You have selected few inclusion-exclusion criteria. There must be something in your mind, but we are not in the process of justifying why did we take him or why did we exclude this person. And that will take care of many of the methodological concerns, as Professor Arun mentioned. It's not representative of the population. So these are the kind of things which will, which are very important. Then again, with respect to the endpoint and outcome parameters, they need to be very, very objectively defined. There should be something which is measurable. And finally, you need to, give an idea as to whatever you are proposing is not something out of the blue. It is something that you can do. You have to share whatever work you have done, whatever support you have, if there is any preliminary data. And it is always advisable that you briefly put up a implementation plan, that this is how I'm going to implement it. That is, I think, which is something which is very, very important. And of course, there are other things which are there. Once you've got a grant, it is very, very important. The 14th point, SOPs for study procedures. What we often do is that हम इसको ऐसे कर लेंगे, हम इसको वैसे कर लेंगे, हम इसको ऐसे कर लेंगे, वो कर लेंगे. जब आप बाद में देखते हैं तो आपको पता लगता है कि इसमें तो ये गैप है, इसमें तो ये गैप है. I think the best way to do it, write everything as an SOP. It is very important. If we are writing a clinical trial and if we are involving the clinical pharmacologist right from the beginning, they will say that you need to have everything. You are going to pre-screen, right? How are you going to pre-screen? हम ओपीडी में देखेंगे, ओपीडी में ये वाला पेशेंट देखेंगे, इस पेशेंट में ये चीज देखेंगे और इस पेशेंट को लेंगे और इस पेशेंट को नहीं लेंगे. अभी हम बोलते हैं क्राइटेरिया दे दिया, जाओ ओपीडी में देख लो. नो, ओपीडी में देख लो का मतलब है उसके 4 स्टेप हैं. वो 4 स्टेप आपको डिफाइन करने, क्योंकि नहीं तो बाद में वो जो आपकी पॉपुलेशन होगी वो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ही नहीं उस चीज की जो आप लेना चाहते हैं. So I think it is very important that every step we should think of it and try to dissect it to the lowest level and start from ensuring that things are happening in the way in which we want it to happen right from the lowest level. And these are the most, we have been a part of multicentric studies, setting up studies in India at various centers. I think the 2 important bottlenecks are planning and implementation. We do not plan well in advance. And once the idea is funded, you see, what will ICMR do if it is getting 100 projects and it, for example, it has now shortlisted 20 projects. But even in those 20 projects, if the planning component is so, but then chalo karna to hai kar dete. But I think in the international arena, this doesn't work. In the international arena, it just doesn't work. There are grants where you can apply only once in a lifetime. Within our group, we secured 3 such grants, but you could apply only once in your lifetime. If your preliminary idea is rejected, you cannot apply in that again for your life. For that you would plan, and for such grants you would plan 3 months in advance. So take everything like that. And once you have a grant which is sanctioned, then it is implementation. अच्छा grant मिल गई, staff ले लिया, इसको बोल दिया ये कर दो. वो कैसे कर रहा है, कितने ढंग से कर रहा है, किस equity से कर रहा है, वो चीज हम तब देखते हैं जब हम रिजल्ट्स देखने लगते हैं और फिर हमें पता लगता है अब तो ये गैप्स है जी. So monitoring, oversight, and this is where I would specifically want to highlight. I think these things, we blame India that this is not possible in India, we have this, that. But just think in your mind, these things are not related to resources. This is not something which is related to resources. Planning and implementation are not related. Implementation का मतलब ही ये है कि आपने existing resources में implement करना, कोई नई चीज लानी नहीं. And how can we address these things? By smart learning, by collaborative and teamwork spirit. We have to think of innovative solutions of doing things in our practice, and we need to increase efficiency. And it is very important that if you are planning something, you start from scratch and you experience every step. For example, if you have to take a blood sample, अगर आपकी स्टडी में यह है कि सैंपल लेना है और आपने कभी लिया नहीं है तो जाके लेके देखो ब्लड सैंपल लेने का क्या मतलब होता है. I think it is very important that you learn and experience every step in detail and you write down procedures. When you have experienced every step, you will know कि कहाँ पे गलती होती है. आपकी एफिशिएंसी उस चीज से बढ़ेगी. आपके पास कोई बंदा रिपोर्ट लेके आएगा कि आज ये हुआ, आपको एग्जैक्ट पता है कि ऐसे ये चीज ये गड़बड़ होती है. आप उससे एक सवाल पूछोगे, उसको वो नहीं आता होगा. This is how we increase efficiency. And this is something which is central to. I think everything, research is central to data. So what are the causes of missing or incorrect data? In our settings, where you do not have any centralized mechanism of data collection, either in the institute or across institutes, it is most likely that the participant or the patient from whom you take data, either he is not traceable or you have not been able to establish a contact. Once you have enrolled, चले गए जी, अब उसके बाद आए नहीं. आप contact establish नहीं हुआ. Contact तो establish हो गया, but the patient came to OPD, उसने दिखाया, चला गया. We didn't seek the information. This is common. This is all these slides are made out of experience that we have had across running, multicentric clinical trials, cohort studies at 10 centers in India. Patient आगे चला जाता है, वो information नहीं पता लगती. पता नहीं लगता कि उसका serum creatinine कितना था. These are practical problems. you have thought. वो बोलेगा, रिसर्च कोऑर्डिनेटर बोलेगा क्रेडिट पूछा तो था पर पता नहीं कहाँ लिख दिया, किसी कागज पे लिख लिया. Then it's available but not recorded, or it's recorded but incorrect. And these are the causes: not sought but not available, available but not recorded, recorded but incorrect. I think with respect to clinical trials are very, very sophisticated mechanisms of generating clinical evidence, and I think all these things need to be considered beforehand. It has taken us 10 or 15 years to understand these things, so you people should take these things from start, that these are the points that you need to focus on. And finally, I'll just summarize it, that first thing that we need to do is, in our local context, first identify an area of interest, and then just focus on that. Participate in an existing network or collaboration as a member. Don't think that if you have read text and become theoretically sound that you are the leader in first or second year of your life. Please, that is an attitude which is killing research at lower level. It is not helping us, helping any of us. So participate in an existing network, collaboration, then you build capacity, knowledge and experience, and then you would be in a position to lead a clinical trial and create your own knowledge. Thank you. I think I've overshot my time by quite large.
Any questions?
So excellent talk as always, sir. Brief question. You mentioned about SOPs and for the implementation of RCTs. Would you like to help us in giving some tips how we could improvise on reducing the missing data in the collections? What you in real world, what do you do?
Yeah. So we have already, you see, the solutions are right there. So what we have done in our setting is that we have now we are using mobile-based technology tools to ensure that the data is collected in real time. We have a data collection tool which has an interface for patient as well as the doctor, which we call as a patient-supported care model. All the databases that we have has an associated mobile application which has an end at the patient which has a patient interface. And what happens is that whatever happens to the patient, for example, let's say the patient goes to Kurukshetra and is seen by a doctor there. So what he does is that he opens that app and he uploads whatever record he has there. कोई भी उसके कोई investigation हुए, कोई doctor ने देखा, कोई इंजो की report है, and he just uploads it there. And that is actually the back end is indexed to our database and it becomes available to us. So this is the tool that we have used. And the second thing that we have transitioned to now is central data entry. You see, for example, I'll tell you an example. You will have people who would give you the study agreements that this is, and in study agreements it would be like this, that the study is led by Flana in US, UK and something like that. The responsibility for maintaining data integrity, security and anonymity at the local center lies exclusively with the local investigator. Now the local investigator who is managing a burden which other people just cannot think of also wants to be part of the limelight. I would not say part of the limelight. He also has a desire that that he should do some work. And the picture that is there around him is that this is something which is fancy. This is something which puts him in limelight. This is something which other people around him regard as something which is very good. So we cannot fault him that he wants to be a part of a study. He wants to be part of a big clinical trial or something like that. But he just doesn't have resources. But those funders, they are not worried. They are not giving mechanisms which will ensure these things down to the lowest level. So what we do is, we do now a centralized data entry. In our setting, वो जो कैलकाटा के मेडिकल कॉलेज में कोऑर्डिनेटर है, वो फॉर्म भर रहा है, हम उसको एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि वो 200 की ओपीडी में फॉर्म भी भरेगा, शाम को वो जाएगा, अपना कंप्यूटर खोलेगा, उसमें एंट्री भी करेगा, उसकी क्वालिफिकेशन 15,000 में आपको कौन सा कोऑर्डिनेटर मिलेगा जो सारा काम करेगा. So what we now do is, in our trials, what we do is that they just, whatever they do daily, they just click a picture of it, they send it to us. We have developed a mechanism to ensure, I would say, compliance with data safety regulations. We have an additional, it's not been completely implemented. We are just revising those things in view of, the recent data safety rules that have been put in place. But those data from everywhere gets collated at one center in real time daily and gets entered by 2 or 3 people, so that it reduces variability and data errors in the long run, and we are able to provide, I would say, a real-time oversight. Now these are, I would say, we have been compelled to think of these things and do these things.
Can I add this? Actually, the problem comes because we become too ambitious. Our case record forms, they run in pages.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's an important point.
Most important point, if you ask me, is to be brief. If it exceeds 1 page, that means if it exceeds 10 questions, there will be problems. The best trials on this earth did not have more than 10 questions. I think you can give the example.
Yeah. So I think this is one of the most important points which I forgot. And we have, for example, I think, I'll tell you from the experience of our cohort, its baseline questionnaire runs into 30 pages. It's a cohort, so we thought that we would meticulously phenotype our patient. But whatever information we have captured, I think it is going to be of no use, at least in my lifetime. I'm telling you, except for 1 to 2% of that information. And what I've realized in this process, it is not like this that you are capturing, information which might not be of value, but you have limited time and you are devoting your time to capture data which you might not need. And in this process, what happens is that you fail to capture or focus your time to capture those outcomes which are indeed important or which form a part of primary or secondary outcomes of your study. And this is what we have done now, is that we have no form in our whatever we are doing now, the form doesn't run beyond 1 page. Only outcome, that's it. And focus on, the problem here is source documentation. In West, what you have is everything is secure at the back end. Source documentation is secure at the back end. You don't have source documentation. यहाँ आप किसी से पूछोगे, आप कोई मेरे को पूछ ले कि मैंने अगर 2018 में अपने टेस्ट कराए थे, उसकी रिपोर्ट कहाँ है, तो मैं खुद नहीं बता सकता कि कहाँ है रिपोर्ट. बस मैं ये बोल सकता हूँ कि नॉर्मल थे जी, मेरे लिए नॉर्मल थे. So I think that is, so we focus on source documentation. Not everything in source documentation is needed for that trial. So you just select those things, restrict those things to those things which you need as part of that research question. This is how I would. What is needed in your research question, just capture that. That's it.
So I'm just skipping some part and again coming to another important topic which I was supposed to be taken, and without so this was my topic. Here I am not a faculty in charge of MERC. Here I am talking about a PI, and sometimes I will share my experience where I sit in different committees of grant sanctioning, grant reviewing and this thing. So regarding, originally my topic was development and discovery proposal, but I'll skip it because 3 of my predecessors has already discussed a lot about that. So I'll just focus on how to prepare a budget for a research grant. So this was to be taken that I would take this part, but I'm just skipping now. Now, very important pertinent questions. What projects are like to be funded? It's very important because we are sitting out here, we want that our project should get funded, and as a sir would like to say that 1:10 से हमें 1:4 1:2 में आ जाए, 1:3 में आ जाए, ठीक है. So most important part is priority disease and conditions. So every funding agency has a limited funds and the takers are too much. For example, previously I told that in 2023, PGI submitted 179 projects and 47 got approved. In the ICMR scenario, there was 3,500 proposals were submitted and around 600 was funded. So we can see out of 3,500, let us say consider 3,000 to 600. So 1:5 ratio was there. In 2024, it was 6,500 proposals were submitted and 450 around was approved. So you can understand there is always a fight amongst each other, even us also, to get that small kitty of funds. So it is better that always we go for the priority disease. Now how do we define the priority disease? Who defines the priority disease? So ICMR has defined the thirst area. If you see the ICMR guideline, you can get the priority disease. The call, it itself says this is the priority disease. So it can have communicable disease, it has non-communicable disease, it's a reproductive, and under all these areas there are some priority disease. And if you click some of them like cancer and microbial resistance, chronic kidney disease, common mental disorder problem, these blue things, they have their more importance. Out of these also they are more important. This is just PDF taken from the ICMR website only. So if you write on these lines, the chances of getting a successful project is much more. Does it mean that the other area does not need any research? No. So those other areas also need research. These all will be shared with all of you, all the PPT, so nothing to write on it. Next, when I or many of us sit as an expert on this committee, this form is given to us and we have to mark every proposal on these forms. What about the background and rationale of the project? 20 marks. Possible impact 20 marks. Novelty and innovation 15 marks. Methodology 30 marks. Implementation strategy and milestone to be achieved in 15 marks. So I hope many of us have submitted the proposals. So you can understand how much is a proposal volume is. 30 pages, 20 to 30 pages. So in a meeting where we have to discuss 40 proposals in 3 hours, it is not possible to go through all these 30 pages. So here is one of my tips for you for a successful project is that already Dr. Vivek has mentioned, Sir also has mentioned 1-page summary. I would like to move one step ahead, give a graphical abstract. Nowadays, many journals is asking for a graphical abstract. So in the graphical abstract, what does it mean? In a pictorial depiction, you will say what is your background, what is the possible impact, what is your novelty, what is the methodology you are doing, and what we are going to achieve. And many times you can say that immediate outcome, mid-term outcome, and long-term outcome. So you are making these things easier for the reviewer to make you more marks. Now this is 100 marks. So what is the qualifying marks? Next question. Is it the 50% like all other MBBS related questions? No. My experience says that unless and until you get 65 or more, you are not even in the competitive zone itself. So to be a safer side, if you want to score, your score should go 70 plus. How to achieve that? Just defining things very categorically. Question, research question to implementation plan. Now my next slide is that reasons for project not likely to be funded. There are 2 types of reasons. One is scientific or technical reasons. Research question is not clear. Majority of the project out of the 6,500 proposals were submitted to ICMR this year, 3,500 were immediately rejected, but they don't have a research question framed properly. Me Too phenomenon. उसने भी किया है, मैं भी करके देखना है PGI setup में. Not going to give you anything, and one single comment will come that there no novelty is there in this project. So Me Too does not occur in this internet area. Just by searching things, you get number of publication. You have to give, if you see the ICMR protocol, there is a part A and a part B. In the part A, there are 19 forms to be filled up. There are some keywords used to be given up. You have to fill up. Whenever it is come to a reviewer or PSC member, it was highlighted. Just click it on this way. How many publications are there in the PubMed will come up. And how many matches with your writer, that will also come up. So there is the Me Too phenomenon is totally no-no. You do a Me Too phenomenon, you just forget about the getting it done. Inappropriate methodology. There is a huge number on methodology part, that is a 30 marks on the methodology and 15 marks on the implementation strategy. So you can see 50% marks on the methodology implementation. If you, whatever you are supposed to do by an observational study, you propose a case control study, so it is not going to, the reviewers are very smart, immediately reject it. Okay, if the things like for basic sciences to be done by ELISA, you put say Western blot, or something to be done by RT-PCR, you say the gene expression by doing the Western blot, so it will be rejected. Another part is inappropriate budget. So my important, I'll discuss detailed on inappropriate budget. There are some other reasons also of getting rejected. Non-priority area. Okay. Unless and until you are an expert on the non-priority area, it is very unlikely that when there is a cutthroat competition amongst ourselves, any non-priority area project got rejected. So how to overcome that? If somebody says, like we shall say that, sir, मुझे तो Crohn's disease में काम करनी है, Crohn's disease में तो कोई priority area में है नहीं, तो मैं क्या करूं? No, उसके भी तरीका है जो I'll talk about it. That is the tarika. Competency of PI and co-PI. Make the team strong. Make every member accountable. उन्होंने sample देनी है बोल के मैंने उनको डाल दिया, तो it does not make any sense when you are talking about the research project. You have to define the role of each and every PI and co-PI. Previous track record matters, and most importantly, significant amount of preliminary data, if you have generated, it shows that you are a competent team. As soon as I talk about the team, inappropriate team is also one important reason for failure of the project. I want to make a liaison with my HOD, so I am putting HOD's name in all the project. It does not make any sense when you are talking about research project. And sir will support me that it does not need it. We don't need it. So just in short form, these are the basic reasons for failure of a project. Now, as I have told, I will discuss on this inappropriate budget part. What is the appropriate budget? How much budget is appropriate? This is a very important question. So now I am talking about what was there. Let's take on 2023 call in understanding. So small grants there was approximately 566 small grants. I have taken from again ICMR source. 560 small grants were approved. These are the different areas out of which you can see development division has the maximum number of. And what was their average mean? This is not median or mode. This is the mean average funding, that is around 70 to 72 lakhs in between somewhere. If we talk about the intermediate grants, around 100 projects were given, 3.5 crores were the median, and again developmental part shares a lion's share. Same thing happens for Center for Advanced Research, where the average is 13 crore and 50% is from the development division. So that means, should we write a project small grant of 70 lakhs only? Does it make sense? No. How much budget is appropriate for my own project? So that is the question, what we are trying to discuss here. Have you heard about this story? The Goldilocks and the Three Bears? So every step, the Goldilocks it is just right. So there is no specific budget that can be advised. It need to be just right according to your whatever proposal you are writing it. Now, how to make the budget just right? So, to propose a budget in different heads. Second part, with a proper justification for everything. Everything means everything. I'll show you examples of the projects which are prototype projects given in the ICMR website made by the budget review committee, which I am a member of that. Can't say DPGI sir, he has forced me to be in that committee. So this is one of the proposals. What are the different budget heads we can see: manpower, contingency, consumables, overhead, so on and so forth. So let me explain one after another what much percentage should be there ideally. So this is a hypothetical budget proposal. I have made it today morning just to make an example. So let us for a single center proposal, and for a small grant, it is normally to cater a single center, maybe for 2 centers, something like that. Single center proposal. There are 2 heads of any budget. Our AORGC is Mr. Devinder Singh is sitting out here, so he can tell if I do something wrong according to the budget. One part is non-recurring, another part is recurring. Non-recurring part means it will be spent only once in the 3-year project or the whole time of the project. So normally we buy equipment from the non-recurring head. Okay, so there is, you can see there is a blank in the year 2 and year 3. Fine. Second part comes the recurring head. Under the recurring head, we have to use monthly or whatever repeatedly we have to use. In that case, we have manpower. I have serious objection of the use the manpower. Then most of our researchers are women power. So I should not say manpower, but it is the term. So ideally it should be human resources. Okay. So in the human resources component, let us say propose a project research scientist. ICMR has defined salaries of everyone. Project scientist 1, project scientist 2, project scientist 3, there are different cadres. Now, depending on your need, you define which post you require. Don't go by just by the flow. If you need a tremendously experienced person, just like a multi-centric clinical trial to run, you would need a project scientist 3. For project scientist 2, maybe a very technically sound person who has ample experience with a post-PhD or post-MD experience, you should need a project scientist 2. For a fresher, you may have a project scientist 1. Every position has its pros and cons, and according to salary will vary. Apart from that, we have a support staff. I have put a senior project assistant, which is a kind of PA kind of staff. Depending on the project's requirement, you have to do it. Now, why I am saying it is flexible, I will explain it again. After that, what we got, that is consumable. So this non-recurring budget will come once, mainly for equipment. We have manpower budget. In the manpower, depending on the project requirement, you have to do it. Next comes the consumable budget. Now, here comes one important thing. For a laboratory-based project, consumable budget may be 50-60% of the whole total budget. But for a community-based project, it may be negligible. Okay, but again, that depends on the what type of project or what type of research question you are trying to answer. Depending on that, you have to give it. Coming to the next one part is contingency. What do you mean by contingency? As per finance, Devendraji, if I am not, please let me. Contingency means it is something for emergency purpose use, which I cannot predict beforehand. That is contingency. So as such, anything can be part of the contingency. But in contingency, which we put unforeseen expenditures. कुछ पोस्ट करनी है, कुछ कोरियर करनी है, कुछ प्रिंट करानी है, कुछ स्टैटिस्टिकल चार्ज देनी है, कुछ ऐसे ये करनी है. This kind of unforeseen expenditure. So mostly contingency has a limit. Funding agency to funding agency, they have limit on contingency head. Some funding agency says that not more than 5%. Some contingency says not more than 50,000 per year. Some funding agency says up to 10% of this total budget. Now another important question comes, that is travel head. What purpose it should be used? For PI, co-PI, staff, working under you, they can travel for data analysis purpose, to do some experiments, some other institute, to visit ICMR, to go to conference, whatever purpose you can propose. Now in this budget, I would like to highlight 2 points. One point is that in the contingency head, in the third year, first year 1 lakh, second year 1 lakh, third year I have given 5 lakhs. Can anyone guess it? Yes. Publication charges. I have put it third year contingency for publication charges. Another thing, 50,000 travel in the first year. Is it justifiable? It is not justifiable. When the project starts, you don't expect that you will go to the conference and present the data. The project funds for the data generated from the project to be presented in the conference and go somewhere. Unless and until you have multi-institutional project where your staff need to go somewhere, do some experimentation or do some training program somewhere, for those purposes this first year budget is there. So this thing you just keep in mind. Now for a budget for a multi-centric proposal, what is to be done? The similar proposal, what I have shown here, to be defined. And in this multi-centric proposal, what extra need to be done, this thing comes into picture. So if let us say AIIMS, PGI and 3 more AIIMS do some multi-centric trial, the PI need to sit sometime in between, even in the first year. They can sit online, but they can send their fellow to go there and develop something in the other institute. So the travel grant may be needed in the first year also. Now, one important aspect in case of multicentric trial, whoever is proposing in a multicentric proposal, PI of the primary center is responsible for receiving the grant and sending the UC and SOE. All the onus is on you. Very important concept. Saurabh is smiling here. He knows what is going on, all these things. Now, the budget to be made in a similar way as a single center, travel between centers can be given. Publication charges to be claimed from only primary center. You don't expect everybody will publish their own data because you are the PI, your idea is with you and the other co-PIs from the other center. So publication charges can only be given, all these things. Now I have made something bold for the whole budget proposal. Reasonable justification to be given for all the items. What I have shown here, that is a spreadsheet, nothing beyond that. But under each and every item of the spreadsheet, being a deep freezer, being a manpower, being a consumable, I need to give every detailed justification unless to make the budget just right. I am just showing you some ideal budget what this budget review committee this time has identified. So this is a total project, actual project. So that's why we have removed this part. We have given the justification of manpower, project scientist 2, what is needed, what is the salary, and exact what are the parts they will be doing. For example, we'll share it, so nothing to worry. For example, if I need a person to data entry operator only for 2.5 years, last 6 months he does not have any job, then we'll recruit for 2.5 years only. That is known as budget rationalization. Okay, and if you propose something extra, the budget committee, the PRC or budget committee, whichever will fill it, they will say that either change it. And if you put it less, your project will be less funded, so you will not be executed optimally. So here you can see, even for the project scientist 2, they are giving the equipment. Then comes equipment required. Major equipment related to the experiment proposed to be project already available in the institute. Co-PI does no equipment is required. Make a statement like this. This means you are already doing the research projects and you know what is required and what is not required. So don't ask anything which does not pertinent to the project. I need a microscope and along with the microscope I ask for another -20. This does not make any sense. And this will give the negative marking on while the major marking sheets are going on. For example, next come to the consumables. You see, all the consumables are given with different heads. What are the different consumables are given? Finally, this kind of budget is made. This is that snapshot is the last page. This is another example. Total project cost, justification of scientist 2, different budgets, clinical sample to be collected, cell line to be collected, consumable to be done. All these things, these I have taken from the discovery budget, one of the discovery. Exactly RNA-seq for objective 1, how much cost will be there, and all these things are detailed. Okay. So this is one of the budgets. Let us come to the developmental division budget, one example. You can see the project, one project research scientist one, the justification is given, one project technical support, the justification is given. Again, for the contingencies, you have justifications. Justification, plastic wire should be used for purposes, process sample and all these things. Reagent consumable kits will be required for sample processing, diagnosed by the molecular assay, etc. You have sequencing, how many sequencing to be done and on which how many cost is there. And many times you can put for higher equipment with a supply order of your own institute or a budget quotation also to support your budget proposal. So with this thing, I would like to say that the budget need to be optimal to execute your project. It cannot be low just to get the proposal. In that case, what will happen? You will not be able to give them deliver the what is to be expected to be delivered. Your next proposal will be shot down. Second point, your track record will go down. On the other hand, if you has asked for a more budget, it will be again be shot down that के इनको तो budget बनाना ही नहीं आता है, कुछ भी मांग लिया है, ठीक है? So at the end, I would like to say this is a very important, and I have gone through it. No madam is sitting out here, Barada sir is sitting out here, sir is sitting out there. Everybody will say that this is the only way. Failures are the pillars of success. And I would like to say one of my own example. Between 2018 to 2023, 18 consecutive grants written by our group on circulating tumor cells were rejected by multiple funding agencies. Fortunately, we didn't stop there. 12, 13, 14, 15 accepted for funding, ICMR and DST and others. What we did, what we learned from our failures, addition of preliminary generated data generated from the intramural grant. I am here highlighting the point of intramural grant. PGI has given me 1 and 2 intramural grants on circulating tumor cell that made our preliminary data so strong and the patient data on those preliminary basic sciences data that they were forced to give me 12, 13, 14, 15 grants. So those were the importance of PGI intramural grant. My younger colleagues, please try to use the PGI intramural grant. In my time, it was 5 lakhs was the capping, but in your time, this is 10 lakhs is the capping for 2 years grant. So please use this grant, write grant, make convincible preliminary data, which will give you a stepping stone for the next big grants. And another thing I would like to highlight here, it is not the number, but the quality. I have given the 2 examples. In 2023, 1:4 we are success rate, 1:10 success rate in 2024, while the number of submission was almost doubled. So please try to concentrate on the quality and quality. If your research question is good, if your these points what I have told how they are marking, they are solid, if your budget is justified, there is high chance that being from PGI नाम में भी काटते हैं थोड़ा बहुत, ठीक है? So being from PGI, there is more success that you will get the things. So thank you very much and happy grant writing. I have a lot of questions. When we have shared our Google Forms, we have asked for that whatever the questions you would like to discuss by this committee or you can ask. We got a huge number of questions and 80% of them are with the budgets. Okay. So do I have time to discuss some of them? 6:20. Time nahi hai. So I will discuss it. We have some questions. I will put some of these questions to the panelists and some of the questions we can discuss during the tea session. Okay. So now we would like to move to another important discussion where we have 1:1 discussion with our panelists. Sir, I would like to request you to chair the session, please. And we have Professor Indu Verma. Madam, Professor Indu Verma, Professor and Head from Department of Biochemistry, my own department. She is one of the very veteran researcher of this institute, going through all these success and failures, and she can share her wisdom. Professor Saurabh Datta, Professor Sanjay Badada, and Professor Shankar Prinja. So we have our 4 esteemed senior colleagues who has gone through this journey, and we would like to share their suggestion. So first, I would like to ask some of the questions. I'll be coordinating the session. Some of the questions from whatever we have collated, and some from mine, and some from the audiences, and later on we can have 1:1 discussion with them. Michael Samnik. So, sir, as a chair, I would like to ask you the first question. That there is a question which is more administrative than researcher, and a frequent issue like clinical patient research, the cost of the hospital investigations like PET, CT, MRI. AIIMS New Delhi has a long-standing rule that waiver of these patients, and many of our researchers want that this should be waived off if the patient is in the used for research purposes. So, what is the administrative stand in this regard, sir?
You know, there are 2 aspects. You can always include it in your budget, because the finance of PGI would always say that wavering is not allowed. So the best thing is to get it incorporated in the budget and mention it specifically. At the same time, I would like to say that there are many expensive investigations people ask for, like somebody wants to do a PET scan, MRIs, etc., etc. And the question comes up whether PGI can really do it if it is not a part of the project. Because suppose somebody wants to do 100 MRIs on, say, sudden demyelinating disease and so on. So the question will come up whether PGI can really do it with so limited number of machines. So many times what we do is that we always propose that all such investigations are done within the house. However, if the department writes that the investigations are not possible because of logistic reasons, then sometimes we do allow that tests can be done outside, but then you have to take a prior permission.
So I hope that we given a very specific answer of the question. And now next question was and you getting the animal facility. There is a question that if any experiments are required to be conducted on animals, the proposed project, what are the facilities available in the institute, and what are the important things to be taken care while practicing this grant?
Okay, so first of all, I'll very briefly tell about the facilities we have in our animal house. It's a very well-structured, well-maintained animal house, but still we need to do a lot to reach up to the level of animal houses in a very good research institutes. So still I can tell you that we have a number of animal species. We have rats, we have mice. In case of mice, we have inbred strains C57 and Bulbc, and in rats we have only outbred strains. So please remember, because I have seen people writing the project that they will take the rats from animal house, and they are going to use inbred rats, whereas we don't have inbred rats. So before writing the grant, you should be very clear that what kind of animals are available here, right? So then in addition to that, we have facilities to work with the BSL-2 pathogens in animals. And so in addition to rats and mice, we have rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, and everything which has to be done on animals, it has to be cleared by Institute Animal Ethics Committee. So everything is available on the PGI website. And another thing I was going to tell you that we have very good BSL2, animal BSL2 facility, where you can work with the animal infections where BSL2 pathogens are used. But please don't propose any project on the BSL3 pathogens. We don't have any facility. We can't work on animals if we want to work on tuberculosis. So that facility is not available. So I am telling you that what we have, what we don't have. Then regarding maintenance of transgenic animals, we have good facility that you can bring the transgenic animals on payment basis from other institutions and maintain them and do good experimentation. Like we have very good facilities where you will have hardly any mortality of the transgenic animals. So people have done, Dr. Anjali Agarwal, I don't know whether she is here or not, she had very good experience with the transgenic animal work, but yes, you will have to obtain the transgenic animals from other institutes. And soon we are going to have live animal imaging system also. So that would be another important thing which will really help people to do good animal research work. And recently we got anesthesia system where you can give very controlled anesthesia to the animals. In fact, some of the very good from anesthesia and from ENT, they are establishing the mechanisms of intubation in rabbits. So these are some good things about the animal house, but we still have to do a lot. So if anybody has any question, so you can ask me, but before submission of the proposal, please be sure what are the species of the animals which are available in the animal house, and whether, and one thing more, many people do the collaboration with other institutes where they have to use the animal, and then suddenly we come to know that they don't have animal house which is registered. So there you can't do any. There are some private institutes. They don't have registered animal house with CCSCA. CCSCA is the this Committee for Control and Supervision of Experimentation on Animals. So be sure that the collaborative institute has a well-placed IAC. They should have an animal house which is registered. Even if they don't have animal house, they are just bringing animals from other places and doing the research work, they should have at least IAEC which is registered. So these are some important things which should be taken care of before submitting any proposal on the animals, animal work. Any question is welcome.
Question on the animal related experiments?
I have a comment to make this. Animal DEXA facility is available at the animal house. So that can be utilized if you want to study bone mineral density. So that is high-end machine that can be used, which is under the control of Madam Indu Orni.
So what I can guess, we have a...
Badada actually got it under a project. So actually I forgot to mention it because I was not sure whether it is really functional or not. So
what I can understand that we have a decently well functioning animal house whose carve is upcoming. So we are expecting some more facilities in near future, and many of our clinical trials, particularly pre-human trials, are to be done in the animals, and many things can be done. So some of our junior colleagues may be trying to do that. Now, sir, Saurabh sir, a typical question I have faced while being faculty in MARC. So again, what is the role of insurance agencies in the clinical trials, and how do you select them?
So I think this whole story of insurance came because there were some unfortunate incidents that had happened in some trial in the past. The Supreme Court actually got into the picture, and then the CDSCO, which is this organization in Delhi, popularly known as the DCGI also, that is the one that is the apex body which guides all this whole insurance thing. Now, if you have if you have a randomized controlled trial which is funded by a company or whose aim is to ultimately make a commercializable product, then 100% you need to have clinical trial insurance budgeted in your trial. They say that academic trials, in quote, academic trials do not require clinical trial insurance. But I would suggest that even if you have an academic trial and it's a big trial funded by a funding agency, multi-center, it's always safer to budget clinical trial insurance, and most funding agencies have now got used to that idea. So, you put it, and even if they don't have it as a budgetary head, under contingency,
you can have it.
You can have it and give a justification. That's the thing. Probably only things like, theses, which are, purely academic, which are not being funded, there, it's fine not to have clinical trial insurance if you're doing a clinical trial. So we were probably one of the first groups which actually got a clinical trial insurance in PGI, in the institute. This was a non-inferiority trial. It was a multicentric trial where we were comparing a short course versus a standard course of antibiotics. And we really struggled a lot because nobody knew exactly how the whole thing was to be done. But briefly, it's like this. As of today, the first thing you need to do is to put up what is known as an expression of interest on the PGI website. That means you're inviting expressions of interest from various insurance companies, and where you're just giving the heading and a very brief description of what that trial will be about, maybe what is going to be the total sample size. And then you invite expressions of interest, and you say that anyone who wishes to provide insurance will have to sign a non-disclosure agreement of the study protocol with the investigators. So you don't put up your protocol upfront in the beginning on the site, because then there is no control over who's going to use that protocol. Somebody else may duplicate your study before you can do it, right? So non-disclosure agreement. Amongst those who respond, you then send the NIQs, notice inviting quotations, and you make your technical specifications for the insurance. The technical specification is quite different than how you do it for, say, a piece of equipment, naturally. So some of the key things that are, can I elaborate a little bit on it? Or? Yeah. Okay. Some of the key things in that in the specifications are: what is your total sample size? Totally, how many centers are involved?
Duration of the project.
The duration of the project. Any one accident, that means any one death, will require how much compensation, and the formula for that is there on the CDSCO website. So if you just go to the CDSCO website, they have all these PDF documents giving the formulas. In a nutshell, the sicker your patient is to begin with before entering the trial, the less is the compensation. So it's inverse, right? Because that patient anyway had a very high chance of dying. But somebody who is healthy, so a healthy volunteer will attract the highest compensation, because that person had no business to die, got into a trial, and perhaps because of a trial died. So highest compensation. The more elderly your patient, the less is the compensation, because they have less number of working years left of their life. So we neonatologists actually shell out the highest compensation because they have the entire lifespan ahead of them. So there is some Delhi Workman's Act, according to which all these things are calculated, how many working years of your life are gone because you've died, and so on and so forth. So there is a formula to that. From that you calculate any one event, if it occurs, how much is the compensation. So for neonates, the compensations are obviously higher, and it's usually somewhere between 18 to 35 lakhs has been for each death. Then after that, you have something called any 1 year, how much will be the total compensation. For that you make a guesstimate that how many such events are likely to happen in a year of your project, and you put that. Also put in legal liability costs into that same budget. So it's not just the compensation you're paying the patient, but suppose the patient files a court case against you or your team or anybody in the team, including, say, the ethics committee or data safety monitoring board or whoever, then it should be able to cover that also. So the third thing you have to keep in mind is deductibles. Anybody who's bought a car insurance knows that there is something called a deductible. That means suppose the damages are, say, 3 lakhs. If you are willing to pay from your pocket the first 50,000 rupees, that's called a deductible. Then the company pays the rest, but then your premium really comes down a lot. So budget for the deductibles also under this clinical trial insurance head when you send it for budgeting. So keep some budget aside for deductibles. That will sharply bring down the
premium, and it actually makes it more economical in the long run rather than having no deductibles at all, right? Then there are certain things that you must keep in mind. It should be very clear in your technical specification that the final authority to decide whether the patient's death or serious adverse event was related to participating in the trial is the sole prerogative of the safety monitoring committee set up by the Institute Ethics Committee. And it is not the prerogative of the insurance company. That should be very clear. Otherwise, there are lots of disputes that start off because of this, that the insurance company, they'll have their own set of so-called experts who will say that no, because they will obviously want to show that everything is unrelated to the trial. So this is one thing that has to be made very clear in the thing, and they have to agree to it upfront. Regarding legal liability, sometimes companies create problems that that if it is because of medical negligence, we will not include it, which I guess is fair enough. So that differs from company to company.
And again, I think the medical negligence will be determined by the data safety committee set up by the thing.
Yeah.
The ethics committee. They will decide that it's a medical negligence or it is.
Yeah. And you must also plan this insurance budget a little carefully, because in the first year of your project, you are not likely to have that many patients enrolled. Because by the time everything gets going, it's about 6 to 9 months. So if you're going to split your total budget, exactly 1/3, then 1/3 of it is almost wasted. So keep only about maybe 20% or 25% of the total budget that you had planned for insurance in the first year when you're budgeting it, about close to half of it in the second year, and the rest of it in the third year of the project.
So normally it is set at 20, 50, 30.
Yeah, I mean whatever is
approximately.
Yeah, approximately. So, and which are the companies that give? The first time we took it, it was from United India Insurance Company Limited, a private sector company. The National Insurance Company gives it. ICICI provides clinical trial insurance. We have just recently, there's a trial going on of methylene blue in catecholamine resistant septic shock we're doing, where Bajaj Alliance Insurance Company is our insurer. So there aren't too many, so there's not a great deal of competition. So one request I have to the Arnav and others is that you can't use the same yardsticks like what you do for equipment as for this thing. There are so few players that one has to be a little more liberal. And the thing is, if you keep on postponing this procedure of getting insurance, you can't even start your trial. So you lose valuable amount of time in the process.
Sir, we have taken the cognizance of that. The benchmark and price justification cannot be exactly provided
each
for
trial
a
is
trial is different.
So there cannot be benchmark for a clinical trial. In fact, if two trials are similar,
the risk may be different, the patient may be different.
You should be held up that how come you're doing a trial which is identical to somebody else's trial.
That's what I was going to ask. Any insurance for MERC or RGC or Dean Research? I am signing, no?
Well, we did have include the Institute Ethics Committee, the Data Safety Monitoring Board, all investigators, all research staff were all covered under our legal liability provisions of the insurance that we had taken.
The next question with Sanjay Bhatta sir. Sir, you are one of the clinicians, rare species clinicians who are into exact basic sciences, scientific research. So there is a question specifically for you. Has been the answer has given that who has asked the question has given to you. How to select common health problems in our country for carrying out research having translational value? What is an endocrinologist's viewpoint? Very philosophical question, but very pertinent also.
Yeah, so I think I can give few examples from our department also. Like anything which we don't know. For example, I'll give an example. 2008 in this hall there was a case presented. The case presented, patient died because of some pain abdomen and finally pancreatitis actually. So calcium is one of the neglected investigation. Nobody bothered about what was the calcium, and the patient has a calcium of persistently 13, 12, but in emergency everybody is busy and given due attention. So I am not in this, Jain sir is here, but by the way I was there on that particular day. So I met presented case was presented by gastroenterology and the
Sir, use that mic, sir.
Use the other one.
so that patient is basically pancreatitis and the cause was also having the patient hypercalcemia. So textbook writes that the primary hyperparathyroidism most common presentation is asymptomatic disease, asymptomatic in PHPT, and this is the, those are applied for MD exam, they know that his answer is asymptomatic because it is mentioned in Harrison. But this is not correct in our setting because PHPT in India is totally different as compared to the Western population. On that particular day I understood that this patient is having actually hyperparathyroidism and that was the cause for his mortality because PTH was high, calcium was high, phosphate was low. Then we started searching the patients of pancreatitis in gastroenterology department that these patients are having. So within a span of 3 months we have seen 10 patients of pancreatitis, the cause was primary hyperparathyroidism. Then we just compared the 3 types of pancreatitis, idiopathic, alcoholic and PHPT associated pancreatitis. And there are a very clear difference in these 3 types of pancreatitis. That patient, those are having renal stone disease, those are having pancreatitis is nothing but is a primary hyperparathyroidism. So best clinical example, the patient is hyperpara and all the patient those underwent surgery, none of the patient is a recurrence. Otherwise gastroenterologists know that every pancreatitis patient is coming every 6 months, 1 year to their gastroenterology department. Meaning by that, this was not known. But if you are closely observing the patient, what is happening, what is outcome, then that can be a research question. So the same thing in not mentioned in Western textbook, the reason is very clear because they don't have that such type of severe hypercalcemia. But we have a calcium level very high and this is the different for us as compared to the Western population. So you should study our literature, you should research on our patient rather than everything mentioned in the textbook is the correct one. So this is the simplest and the best example. Now translational research, again, for example, Dr. Rama with the nuclear medicine department, they established M-Desmopad to localize the Cushing disease patient. That is one of the best example and our group is working for the primary hyperpara adenoma localization with calcium sensing receptor by Cinacalcid. That is also approved by the DBTA, we are working on that. So anything which is not known, we should try to explore them and that can be very, very useful.
Thank you, sir, for your advices and wisdom. Now, Dr. Shankar, you were taken as one of the best health economists to analyze the countries as well as different projects. A typical project-related question is here. How do you analyze the project proposal from health economist perspective? And how do calculate the cost effectiveness of any intervention at the national level? All the 2 separate questions.
I think that there's been quite a lot of interest in having some research question related to economic analysis of healthcare interventions incorporated in research proposals. So for example, recently Dr. Arnav was showing a list of priority areas that the ICMR has come up with. So ICMR also came up with the national health research priorities as well. And they've commissioned a set of 6 multi-centric studies which are implementation research studies. So each of these implementation research studies are separate studies which are, for example, one is in the field of mental health, in neonatology, one on general primary health care, one on suicide prevention, something on oral health as well. But one of the things that the ICMR has tried to do to have a common thread across all of these is to create a kind of a health economic perspective towards analyzing each one of these proposals. The first interest among them for each of these proposals is not necessarily only to look at the full cost effectiveness of those interventions, but the first is more on cost. The reason that they were more interested to look at cost alone to begin with was because they said that after having spent a lot of money on research, what is the end of it? End of it is that you either put it into practice or you put it into policy. But whenever such an evidence goes to a policy maker, the first question that he asks is that what is the amount of budget that I need to put in to implement such an intervention. So one of the aspects that the proposals are generally looked at specifically are that if there is an angle of cost analysis that is built into the proposal. But this becomes a bit more complicated in Indian context as compared to some of the other countries,
where almost everything is, so if you go to UK or some other country setting in Scandinavian countries, everything is by and large paid by the government. So single payer is paying for everything. Here in our context, for example, a patient comes to PGI and you have to say what is the cost of treating that patient. There is a certain amount of money that the system is spending, the hospital is spending, which comes in the form of the subsidy that the government is paying for. And there is a certain amount of expenditure that people are incurring. So in a lot of proposals, while people do say that they're doing an economic analysis and they're estimating the cost of treatment, they're only actually interviewing the patients to elicit the out-of-pocket expenditures that they are incurring. But another major component of the actual cost that is being spent on patient care is this health system cost, which generally seems to be lacking. So I think one of the suggestions could be that some methods around that could also be built to make the proposal a little bit more comprehensive in terms of costing. And just another point, because Dr. Vivek had mentioned a lot about clinical trials and writing proposals on topics related to clinical trial. A cost effectiveness analysis is not too different, because you're actually in a clinical trial, you're comparing two or more alternatives and you're valuing the health outcomes in those patients. The only thing that you do in addition to that when you write a proposal for a cost effectiveness analysis is that you also build in measurement of cost in addition to the measurement of or valuation of the health outcomes. But another major piece of difference then becomes in the proposal is that while in most of the clinical trials you are happy with short-term endpoints that you observe during the period of the trial, but most of these economic analyses tend to look at long-term distant outcomes, because a lot of money that you spend today may have value much more downstream, and those things may not be necessarily observed during the period of trial, but they are to be done through some kind of model-based evaluations. And so some methods related to that probably might be better if they are specified in the proposal.
So we have come to closure of one round of already pre-formed questions. Now it is open to the House if they have any questions, queries to our panelists. Sir.
It's not a question, it is only a comment. If we can take the expertise of all these people and have one broad template, say for a clinical trial insurance document, and also for basic level, costing related thing, and keep that also available so that people who need it don't have to start from scratch, it might be helpful.
Thank you, sir, for the advice. To emphasize on this, we are already from MESC, we are doing something. For example, we have taken a clinical trial agreement prototype. We are making this one after another prototype so that you get a ready-made dhacha and then you change according to your need. So this, in due course of time, maybe in next 6 months or 1 year, we'll be giving them available through our portal. So some of them will be going to do it. Please, Dr. Nitin.
So this is targeted to Chairman Sir and Dr. Saurabh maybe. What are the, this is not an ICMR grant writing related question, but the question is from my specialty, because it's a niche specialty. We don't have big numbers where we can talk about things like maybe health economics and things like that. So how do we approach research proposals from maybe say pediatric cancer or biliary atresia or small segments which are important, but they don't, they don't have a bigger outcome in terms of the
number
policy makers. Yeah. So
I'm saying about, it all depends on project to project basis. See, the numbers are not important in all diseases. What is important is your concept and what exactly you want to do. And if the numbers are small, is the project of a large scale or a small scale? And if the numbers are small, that's why I'm saying I always believe in multi-institutional type of trials. Like there'll be many trials on rare diseases. If you collect across the country, the numbers become in hundreds. If you want to do on a rare disease in a single center, that would be very small. So answer is multi-institutional.
Sir, if I sir, आप पहले बताइए फिर आइए.
So I echo Dr. Sanjay Jain's comment that you have to make networks whenever you're dealing with diseases which are not large in number, and don't start off with a clinical trial. first start off with just basic, data gathering. One is always surprised especially when one is doing a sample size calculation, that when you have to make an assumption for the control arm trial, how little data exists for most diseases in India. And then you're making assumptions about the control rate, and then you get the whole thing wrong because that control rate figure is incorrect for your population. So maybe if there is some disease like this, first plan a study which is just going to be more descriptive or risk factor observational analytical cohort or analytical cross-sectional type of study, and then think about a clinical trial. There's one little point I wanted to make after you finished your thing about budgeting. One thing I have found very useful when preparing a budget is to make it in Excel using Excel formulas. That means the sum of this row to this row, and become adept at Excel formulas. How to use the dollar sign when you don't want the cell number to change when you're scrolling down, and so on and so forth. I can't tell you how much time is saved by making an Excel spreadsheet with formulas, because you will have to change the budget a number of times. You can never make a final foolproof budget the very first time. And what happens is that each time you change it and you're sitting with your calculator, you make some mistake somewhere, from the grand total to everything budget to center-wise total, everything changes. So please spend some time making an Excel spreadsheet and then start putting in the numbers, including things like, for example, the HRA is different in different cities. So, people often forget that and they put the same HRA, and then it comes back after some time with a comment that, your budget proposal was incorrect. So just spend some time with Excel.
It is Excel and PowerPoint. They are one of the best software Microsoft has ever made, but we generally use very little about the capability of the Excels. So please try to do it. I have missed it. Try to use the Excel to its Excel.
I also want to add one point to budget only. So in recurring budget, if you are using animals, please do add the budget for the purchase and maintenance of the animals. Because then I get lot of applications, please waive off the charges, which is not possible.
And put it into the contingency head.
I'll ask my administrative officer from RGC to comment actually. What are the real issues you face while auditing all these accounts? What are the usual mistakes? See, our work is basically to simplify and to see that the life is easy. So maybe one or two comments you can make.
Please welcome Devinder ji, who is Accounts Officer of RGC, and he is doing a great job, I must say. There is a lot of improvement you can also feel during the processing of the bills and everything. I think he needs a bigger applause. Please.
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल जो हम ओवरहेड चार्जेस की बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें हमें फंडिंग एजेंसी की तरफ से जो प्रपोजल हम जस्टिफिकेशन ऑफ बजट में बना के भेजते हैं, कई बार वो वहाँ से नहीं मिलता है, तो ये ऑब्जेक्शन होता है हमारा। दूसरा, जब वहाँ से मिल गया है तो पीआई ये बोलते हैं कि हमने इतना दिया था, अगर वहाँ से ज़्यादा आ गया है तो वो हम इंस्टीट्यूट को नहीं देंगे। ये हो गया, ये भी एक दिक्कत होती है उसमें।
तो इस बारे में रूल इज़ वेरी क्लियर। You have to propose 5% or according to funding agency's norms, whatever funding agency gives, be it 10%, be it 20%, be it 50%, be it 0, we will accept that. So there is no confusion about that. Zero also, yes. If the funding agency does not give anything, we will not charge it.
And GST, please don't forget GST. And that's for
GST
doesn't account, but at least for the private agencies,
GST is an account.
Always to be, the agreement has to have that.
दूसरा, अगर सैंक्शनड अमाउंट बजट की हमारे पास फॉर एग्जांपल 20 लाख है एंड द पीआई हैज़ एक्सपेंडेड ओनली 10 lakh out of that 20 lakh which was sanctioned in the first year, and the PI has to pay again the overhead charges on the full amount, because in the second year if they are getting less amount from the funding agency, first from the budget of first year 10 lakh was remaining, and only if the in the second year they are getting that much less amount, then also PI need to pay overhead charges on the full sanctioned amount only. There a dispute arises between RGC and the PI. They say that
Again, there
because
is
we
no
have
dispute.
not
Because
we have
whatever
not
funding
utilized.
agency has given on that head, we will charge that.
They are saying that we have not utilized that amount and in the first year only we have paid the overhead charges, and the second year the same amount has been given to us by the funding agency. That's why we are not able to pay it again and again. But rules are very much clear about this. They will have to pay on the total sanction amount even if they are not able to expand it. The institute has not at any fault in this respect. Third is about the GST amount. If the funding agency initially gives the principal amount of the bill and says that the GST amount will be paid later on, and later on at the initial stage invoice is raised and no GST on that is being provided by the funding agency, and it at a later stage if GST is given by the funding agency and the institute's software is like that, whatever amount you are receiving from the funding agency, either it is in the form of a GST or any other form, contingency head or salary, it is automatically going to deduct the overhead charges from it. Here the question arises that the PI says that why institute is charging overhead charges on GST amount also, because that you need to pay to the government of India. है वो है, अदरवाइज आल्सो ऐसा है उसमें जीएसटी अमाउंट की वजह से अगर वो उसको बाद में देते हैं, इट डजंट मीन दैट द फंडिंग एजेंसी इज exempted from paying overhead charges on the GST amount.
Let me clarify one thing, that overhead charges what MERC or RGC is taking, that is actually going to you only. This has been used for funding special research grant. All the MD, DM, MCH, MSc students, 10,000 rupees gets to the HOD is given per year. This amounts to almost 1.5 crore. This is how much amount. We are giving around 30 to 40 intramural grants amounting to 10 lakhs. We have proposals for, Sir is saying that we have some future proposals of getting some seed money also. The whole money, whatever we are deducting as overhead charges, are giving back to the faculty only. So I would like to again introduce another person who is MERC, Assistant Administrative Officer, Rakesh ji. He has joined recently from procurement, and after his joining, we are getting very good help. And we, sir, it is like a flowing fever. No money is there, but money is there. It is a flowing fever. You get the fund. We will fund you.
Money will never be an issue. Never. Money is the last thing to be considered. Good science, you'll get everything.
And finally, I would
let me just tell you about the accounts. One small thing.
Sir,
one has to be very careful. Paperwork has to be complete. I'll just give you a small example. 3 quotations, one from Kerala, one from Bangalore, one from Mohali, all by hand. And it's not in one, in many. I have passed all of them. Question is that I have told actually what should be done. What should be done is ask on email. Rest you all understand what I'm saying.
So we come to at the end of this program, but I would like Dean sir to announce a few things how we are heading for in future, because we are trying to put some hand-holding also as well as some stringency also.
Yes.
So
the first word, that is just the beginning.
This workshop is the beginning.
We are going to have more sessions based on your input. And those will include, as I said, on research methodology, doing research, biomedical ethics, statistics, etc. But it cannot be done by the MERC or RGC. We need people who are very good at, I know certain people. So if you want all those will be a small targeted group. Then we plan to hold one once the new people join, possibly because the faculty would be taken. So that will be the second one. The third one, if you are asking for a small grant that is less than 2 crores, then possibly you can write it straight. But if the grant is intermediate, I would always say that please send it to RGC so that we can vet it. And inputs can also be given because that's going to be large grant. And at this time, I must congratulate Dr. Saurabh. I think he got a grant of 7 crores or something.
7.89 crores.
So I would say that if you submit it to us, then possibly we can help you in improving on that, and at the same time lots of administrative issues can also be solved. Number 3, for UCs, that is utilization certificate and statement of expenditure, please submit in time. And similarly, if the last date this time for ICMR submission is 1st April, please submit by 15th or 22nd of March. Otherwise, last time at midnight also people were knocking. Sir, please thank those sir, kal bhejna hai.
So please,
Even I am a human being, so let me
sir, let it be very clear, unless and until this time, if it is at least 7 days prior submitted, we are not going to forward it.
Please get a pledge check even in your
Yes,
budget.
pledge check certificate need to be attached also. Plagiarism check.
I suppose these are just some housekeeping. Frankly, let me tell you that nobody would block. I have not blocked a single project as yet, but we want the paperwork to be complete because that's the requirement. We don't want any issues for anyone. Good research means that mental peace has to be there, then only you can do good research. That's it, if you want to add something.
Please, sir. Any comment?
Just a small practical tip. So most funding agencies now you have to submit the proposal online. So there are boxes and so on, and they all, I don't know, they get it done from NIC or which agency. They are not really well made online platforms.
They're actually pathetic.
So sometimes you've typed it in, you're about to submit, then it says now it will say that only so many words were allowed in that box, or so many characters, certain characters are not allowed. Then you can't go to the next page until all the starred boxes are all filled. So what I have done is, first thing I do is I put one student on the job, just fill some dummy alphabets in each box. Just fill up some dummy alphabets and keep going till the last page and get to know what are the headings that you need to fill. Right? Get to know what are the headings you need to fill right till the pre-submission step, and keep putting it on a Word document that this is the heading, this has so many characters, Fill up your Word document, and then it's a breeze. You just cut and paste, copy paste onto the on the online thing.
Sir, exactly what sir is saying, my group is doing the same thing. Same thing, exactly the same thing. Anyway,
Dr. Arnab,
yes,
8 point off.
Please, ma'am.
Just like whosoever has this ICMR proposals which have already been completed, please make sure they are removed from the portal. I have suffered because of this.
Dr. Vadada sir and madam.
Because my even completed projects were showing there as ongoing and my projects were not evaluated.
There is a cutoff of 5 projects. So both madam and sir was, previous projects were shown live projects. Although their time was...
Although I had submitted all the documents.
It was closed actually. But it was not uploaded in their portal.
Yes. So please be sure that on your ICMR portal, the closed projects are showing closed.
So today we are at the verge of closure, only 6 minutes late. Okay. So I have to say a number of thanks to a number of people who has made this successful. First thanks goes to you. Because, and there are a good number, almost 55 plus online participants also. So more than 100 forms have been filled up, 128 specifically, and we have more than 100, and we can see some students are also interested to join this. So thank you very much to be here. I would like to thank DPGI to initiate this thing and always helping us to go ahead. Whatever things we take into him, and he said that, okay, kar le. Okay. So a big thanks to DPGI to create a very positive environment of having research in our institute. Thanks to Din sir in the Saturday afternoon, as he said, leaving everything, family, kids, grandkids, and sitting out here with all of us. Thank you so much, sir, for inspiring. I thank all the resource persons and panelists to be here with just a phone call away, and our MERC and RGC staff who has worked a lot and actually working a lot continuously to make a very positive environment to do a research specific environment in the institute. And I'll again assure you, Kapil has joined me as a faculty in charge procurement to burden my work slightly, and he has done doing a good job. And all these things, background job has been done by Kapil, although I'm standing here, but the background job has been done by Kapil only. A big applause for him also, please. And one thing I am assuring you with the leadership of DPJ and Dean sir, we are only a phone call away. If you face any problem, just give us a call, me or Kapil or even Shushila madam, we will be there to solve your problems. Currently, our turnaround time for any problem solving has come down to almost 2 days. Almost 2 days. If you feel anything, if it comes in the today evening, tomorrow it is processed, and by tomorrow evening, Dean sir's sign is there. So we have achieved a significant rapidness, not at the cost of making faults. Make it very, very clear. Okay. If there is a faulty thing, we are very blunt about it. Okay? It cannot be done. Okay. And so we are making the things faster. We are trying to help you out, but we need help from you also. Today, after this workshop is over, we'll have a cup of tea down there for all of us. We can discuss something more.
Ready in next 7 days.
Yes.
No, purpose is this.
Sir.
If we give, we extract also. No,
And
for you.
another point is that what is more important, I will share a feedback form. Please give us feedback how to move about it. As sir has told, it's the first one, but many more will be coming into the thing. They will be not like broad, they will be very specific topics we can take care of. Thank you very much for being here.